Chapter 1. The scent of pine needles and damp earth usually brought me a sense of peace, a grounding comfort that spoke of my ancient lineage and the strength of my Shadowwood pack. But not today. Today, it was just another layer in the suffocating blanket that had settled over me a year ago, the day the world went silent. A year. 365 days since I'd felt the warmth of her hand in mine, since her laughter had echoed through these very woods. 365 days since I'd become a widower alpha, a king without his queen, a man without his heart. I stood at the edge of the training grounds, the rhythmic thud of paws and the clash of practice weapons a dull roar in my ears. My warriors moved with precision, their movements honed by countless hours of drills, by the very need for survival. They were strong, my pack, fiercely loyal, but I could feel the subtle tremor beneath their collective strength, a quiet anxiety that mirrored my own. They missed her too. My Luna, my everything. I had avenged her. The Bloodhound pack, those ruthless curs who had dared to cross into my territory and take what was most precious to me, had paid dearly. I had hunted their leader, tracked him through days and nights, through treacherous ravines and over unforgiving peaks, fueled by a rage so potent it felt like a living thing inside me. And finally, beneath a blood-red moon, I had exacted my vengeance. The memory of the kill was sharp, visceral, a cold, hard satisfaction that had burned bright for a fleeting moment before leaving me emptier than before. It hadn't brought her back, it hadn't filled the void. It had simply left me with nowhere to direct the raw, untamed emotion that had fueled my rage. My heart, once a vibrant, beating drum, was now a hollow echo chamber, vast and desolate. Alpha. Kale's voice, gruff and steady, broke through my thoughts. I didn't turn immediately. I knew what Kale would say. I always knew. Kale was my beta, my second in command, a man whose loyalty was as unshakable as the ancient oaks that guarded our territory. He was also the primary voice of the elders, the one who carried their collective will, their pragmatic demands. He had been with me through the darkest days, a silent, unwavering presence, and for that I owed him everything. "They're ready for the evening meeting," Kale continued, stepping closer. I finally turned, my gaze sweeping over my beta. Kale was a formidable wolf, scarred and weathered, his eyes holding a wisdom born of countless seasons. He was also the one who had seen me at my lowest, who had held me up when I thought I might crumble into dust. He knew the depths of my grief, the raw, ugly edges of it. "Are they?" My voice was flat, devoid of the usual resonance that commanded attention. Kale nodded. "More than ready. They're anxious, Liam. The scouting reports from the borders. The Western pack isn't just getting stronger, they're probing, they're bolder. We need to solidify our alliances, and you know what that means." My jaw tightened. I knew with a crushing certainty that settled deep in my bones. It meant a new mate, a political union. It felt like defiling a tomb, like spitting on the memory of the only woman I had ever truly loved. "The elders are firm," Kale pressed, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Seraphina spoke with them again this morning. They believe it's the only way to secure the Shadowwood's future. The Stonehaven pack is powerful. Their alpha, Theron, is a shrewd leader, and his daughter, Elara, she's a warrior, a strong she-wolf. It would seal the alliance, make it permanent." I closed my eyes for a moment, picturing it. A new face, a new body, a new presence in my den. The thought was repugnant. My mate, my true mate, was gone. Her scent, her touch, her very essence was etched into my very soul. Every memory, every shared breath, every whispered secret was a brand on my heart. How could I possibly bring another into that sacred space? It felt like a desecration. "It's a necessity, Liam," Kale murmured, his voice gentle now, laced with a pity that I found unbearable. He knew me too well, saw too much. "Not a choice. Not for you, not for the pack. We lost too many in the last skirmish. Our numbers are strong, yes, but they are not limitless. We cannot face the Western pack alone, not if they continue to grow like this. Even our strength has its limits. You know this." I did know this truth. I was a powerful alpha, perhaps one of the strongest in the region. My pack was well-trained, disciplined, and fiercely loyal. We were formidable. But the Western pack was like a festering wound, growing, spreading, infecting the territories around them. Their numbers swelled. Their ambition knew no bounds. They were ruthless, cunning, and their expansion was relentless. An alliance with the Stonehaven pack wasn't just beneficial, it was vital. It was the difference between survival and annihilation. My diplomatic skills, honed over years of navigating complex interpack relations, told me this was the only viable path. "I understand the logic, Kale," I said, my voice a low growl, the words grating in my throat. "I always understand the logic. It's the rest of it that's complicated." "Complicated is an understatement, Alpha," Kale murmured. He knew. He understood the personal cost. "But you are the Alpha. You always put the pack first. You always have. You always will." I felt a fresh wave of self-loathing. He was right. I was an Alpha. I knew that. I cared for my pack, protected them, led them with unwavering resolve. Every decision I made was for their safety, their prosperity. But this felt like a sacrifice I couldn't make without sacrificing a part of my soul. Or rather, a sacrifice I was being forced to make, and one that would demand a sacrifice from someone else. This Elara. She would be entering a mating with a ghost, with a man whose heart was a barren wasteland. It wasn't fair to her, and the unfairness of it gnawed at me, a dull ache beneath the sharper pangs of grief. The thought of inflicting such a burden on an innocent, strong she-wolf twisted my gut. "Set the meeting," I finally conceded, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Send the message to Theron. Tell him I will consider his daughter." Kale nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes. "Good, Alpha. This is for the best. For all of us." He didn't press for more, knowing I had given all I could. I watched Kale walk away, my shoulders slumped. For the best. I repeated the words like a mantra, trying to convince myself, but the emptiness inside me only grew, vast and cold. I was a charmer, they used to say. That man was gone, replaced by this stoic diplomatic leader burdened by grief and duty, whose heart was a fortress. I didn't know how to be anything else anymore. And the thought of bringing another she-wolf into this desolate landscape, of offering her only respect and partnership when she might crave love and passion, filled me with a profound, suffocating regret. I hated what I was about to do to her. Days later, the message from Stonehaven arrived. Alpha Theron accepted the proposal. He would bring his daughter, Elara, to Shadowwood in 3 days. 3 days to prepare for a meeting that would seal my fate and hers. I spent those days immersed in pack duties, throwing myself into patrols, training sessions, and strategic planning for the looming conflict with the Western Pack. I pushed myself to the brink of exhaustion, hoping to silence the relentless thoughts that plagued me, the whispers of my lost love, the gnawing guilt of my impending actions. I needed to be strong, decisive. I needed to be the Alpha my pack deserved. Every fiber of my being screamed for solitude, for the quiet darkness of my den, but duty demanded my presence, my leadership. I was in the main hall, reviewing new border maps with Kale and Finn, when Seraphina approached me. Her steps were quiet, her presence a calming balm, like the soft touch of moonlight on a troubled stream. She was ancient, her fur a silvery white, her eyes deep pools of wisdom that seemed to see into the very core of my being. "Liam," she said, her voice raspy but clear, carrying the weight of centuries. "You carry a heavy burden." I merely grunted, tracing a line on the map with a calloused finger. "It's the Alpha's burden, Seraphina. Nothing new." I tried to sound dismissive, but even to my own ears it sounded hollow. "This one is different," she countered gently, her gaze unwavering. "This one touches your soul. I see the emptiness. I see the guilt that gnaws at you, Liam. It is a poison, Alpha, if left unchecked." I stiffened, my hand pausing on the map. "There's no guilt, only necessity, only duty." I lied, not to her but to myself. The guilt was a constant companion, a shadow clinging to my every step. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparations. The pack was buzzing with a nervous energy, a mix of apprehension and hope. A new Luna, a new alliance, a chance for stability against the encroaching darkness of the Western Pack. I felt none of it, only a profound sense of resignation, a heavy weight in my chest. I stood at the entrance to the main den, the place where I would meet her. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of my pack mingling with the fresh, clean scent of the forest. My pack members were gathered, a sea of expectant faces, their eyes fixed on the path, then on me. Kale stood beside me, a silent pillar of support, his presence a steadying force. Finn, the head warrior, looked grim but ready, his gaze sharp, assessing. Then the first scent hit me. Not strong, not overwhelming, but distinct. pine and something else. Something wild and earthy, like stone warmed by the sun. It was Elara. I saw her then, emerging from the tree line, flanked by her father, Alpha Theron, and a few of their warriors, including Ryan. She walked with a confident stride, her head held high, her posture radiating strength. She was tall, with dark hair that caught the sunlight, and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but my mind registered it clinically, without a flicker of true interest. My vision was still filled with another face, another form. Alpha Theron was exactly as I remembered him, imposing, pragmatic, with a shrewd gaze that missed nothing. He offered a curt nod of greeting, his expression unreadable. Alpha Liam, Theron's voice was deep, resonant, a sound of authority. Thank you for receiving us. Alpha Theron, I replied, my voice firm, projecting the authority I felt obliged to display, even if my heart was crumbling inside. My diplomatic training kicked in, the practiced ease of a leader. Welcome to Shadowwood. My gaze then shifted to Elara. She met my eyes directly, without flinching. There was no fear there, no shyness, only a quiet intensity that surprised me. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite decipher. Curiosity? Apprehension? A hint of something deeper? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to see anything that might make this harder. I knew what I had to do. I had to set the record straight, immediately. I couldn't let her harbor any false hopes. I couldn't let her believe that this was anything more than a necessary arrangement, a cold bargain for survival. It would hurt, I knew. I hated that I had to inflict that pain. But it was better than a slow, agonizing deception. It was better than her discovering the barrenness of my heart months down the line. I took a deep breath, the scent of pine and stone filling my lungs. This was it, the moment of truth, the moment I would lay bare the barren landscape of my heart and hope she would understand.
Chapter 2. The wind, sharp and clean, whipped through my hair as I stood on the highest crag of Stonehaven. Below, our packed territory stretched out, a rugged landscape of natural caves and imposing rock formations. It was a harsh land, unforgiving in its beauty, but it was my land. It was home. My pack, the Stonehaven, was forged from resilience and discipline, our very existence a testament to strength and unwavering resolve. We valued stoicism here, a practical approach to life where emotions were often kept private, a quiet strength that ran in our blood. I was Elara, daughter of Alpha Theron and a warrior of the Stonehaven pack. My life was defined by purpose. Every sunrise found me training, my muscles burning, my senses honed. I led patrols through treacherous mountain passes, my instincts sharp, my blade swift. I knew every shadow, every hidden crevice of our territory. My prowess in battle was unquestioned, my loyalty absolute. I was proud of my strength, proud of my place. Elara! Ryan's voice, a familiar bark, carried on the wind. I turned, a small smile touching my lips. Ryan was my childhood friend, a skilled warrior in his own right, and my closest confidant. He moved with the easy grace of a wolf who belonged to the wild, his dark hair perpetually falling into his eyes. "What is it, Ryan?" I called back, my voice clear. He scrambled up the last few feet of rock, landing beside me with a grunt. "Your father wants to see you. Now, he's in the main den, and he looks serious." My smile faded. My father, Alpha Theron, was always serious. He was a strong, respected alpha, his leadership unwavering, his decisions always for the good of the pack. But his emotional expressions were as rare as a bloom in winter. If he looked more serious than usual, it meant something significant, something that would impact the pack, and quite possibly me. "Very well," I said, my gaze sweeping over the horizon one last time. The sun was dipping, painting the sky in fiery hues, but even the beauty of it couldn't fully ease the sudden tension in my chest. "Let's go." We descended the crag, the familiar path beneath my boots. As we approached the main den, the low hum of voices reached us. Elders, some of our most seasoned warriors, a formal gathering. My apprehension deepened. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken gravity. My father stood at the head of the long stone table, his formidable presence filling the cavernous space. His eyes, usually sharp and assessing, held a rare weight. He gestured for me to stand before him. "Elara," he began, his voice deep and steady, betraying no hint of emotion. "We have received a message from the Shadowwood pack." My ears perked. The Shadowwood pack. Whispers had reached us of their alpha's grief, of his brutal vengeance against the Bloodhound pack. They were known for their strength, their ancient lineage, and their fierce loyalty. And their alpha, Liam, was rumored to be one of the most powerful in the region. There were also older tales of a charming, humorous alpha, a man who could light up a room. They seek an alliance, my father continued, his gaze unwavering. A permanent one. The Western Pack's aggression has escalated. Their numbers grow. Even with our combined strength, the threat is considerable, but together, we stand a far greater chance. I nodded, my mind already racing through the strategic implications. An alliance with Shadowwood was indeed vital. Their forest territory complemented our rocky defenses. Their warriors were renowned. It made perfect sense. And how do they propose to seal this alliance, Father? I asked, my voice calm, though a knot was forming in my stomach. I knew the answer before he spoke it. Political alliances between powerful packs often came with a price, a personal sacrifice. My father's eyes met mine, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. Through a mating, between you and their alpha, Liam. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. A mating. My mating. Not chosen by my heart, but by duty. I had always known this was a possibility. As the alpha's daughter, my life was not entirely my own. My future was intertwined with the pack's survival. I understood duty deeply. It was ingrained in my very being. But beneath that understanding, a quiet, almost secret, longing stirred. A longing for a true mate bond. Not just a political arrangement, but a connection that went soul deep, like the ancient stories spoke of. A bond of passion, of shared laughter, of unwavering love. I had seen glimpses of it in other packs. In the rare, fortunate pairs who found their true match. It was an idealism I rarely spoke of, a quiet dream I held close, and now it seemed that dream was to be sacrificed on the altar of necessity. Alpha Liam, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. He lost his mate, did he not? A year ago? My father nodded. Indeed, a tragic loss. He avenged her, brutally, I hear. He is a formidable alpha. But yes, he is a widower. And from what our scouts have gathered, a deeply grieving one. A deeply grieving one. The words echoed in my mind. He needs this alliance, my father continued, oblivious to my internal struggle, or perhaps simply choosing to ignore it. And he needs a Luna. His pack needs stability. This is the strongest offer we can make. It is permanent. It is binding. I understand the necessity, Father, I said, my voice firmer now, pushing down the nascent disappointment. The Western Pack is a growing threat. Our combined strength would be formidable. Then you agree? He asked, his gaze piercing. I took a deep breath. My duty, my pack, their survival, my personal longings, my quiet dreams seemed small and selfish in the face of such a monumental threat. I was a warrior. I made sacrifices. I agree, I stated, my voice clear and unwavering. If it is for the good of the Stonehaven Pack and the greater good of our territories, then I will do my part. A murmur of approval rippled through the elders. My father gave a curt nod, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. Good. The Shadowwood Alpha expects us in 3 days. Prepare yourself, Elara. This is a significant step for our pack. As the meeting dispersed, Ryan lingered, his eyes filled with concern. Elara, he said, his voice low, are you truly all right with this? A mating? I turned to him, forcing a small smile. It is my duty, Ryan. You know that. Our pack needs this alliance. And Alpha Liam, he is a powerful alpha. He will be a good partner in leadership. But a partner in life? Ryan pressed, his brow furrowed. You deserve more than a political arrangement, Elara. You deserve a mate who sees you, truly sees you, and loves you with his whole heart. Not one still grieving a ghost. His words struck a chord, a painful echo of my own quiet longing. Perhaps, I admitted, my gaze drifting to the entrance of the den as if I could see the distant Shadowwood. But duty calls. And who is to say what the future holds? He is a good alpha, and I am a strong she-wolf. We will make this work. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just worry about you, Elara. And you worry too much, I countered, nudging him playfully. Come, let's go over the latest border reports. We need to be fully prepared for this journey and for what comes after. Despite my outward composure, the conversation with my father, and then Ryan, had stirred a whirlwind of emotions within me. I had heard the whispers of his vengeance, the sheer brutality of his retribution. It spoke of a powerful, dangerous wolf, but also one capable of immense, consuming emotion. I spent the next 3 days in a flurry of activity, preparing for the journey to Shadowwood. I packed only what was essential: my warrior's gear, a few changes of clothing, and a small, cut-worn leather-bound journal where I sometimes scribbled thoughts I wouldn't voice aloud. I wondered if Liam's grief had stripped him bare, leaving him vulnerable in a way that would be alien to most alphas. The thought was both daunting and strangely compelling. Could I, despite the circumstances, find a way to connect with him? Could I, a she-wolf who valued honesty and quiet strength, find something real in a mating born of duty? My father gave me strict instructions for the meeting. Be respectful, Elara. Be firm. Show them the strength of Stonehaven. Do not show weakness. I understand, Father, I replied, my gaze steady. I knew how to be strong. I knew how to be respectful. I knew how to project authority, but I also knew how to observe, how to listen, how to feel. The journey to Shadowwood was long, a silent procession through dense forests that grew taller and darker as we approached their territory. Ryan rode beside me, his presence a quiet comfort. We spoke little, each lost in our own thoughts. As we neared the Shadowwood borders, the air shifted. The scent of ancient pine grew stronger, mingled with the distinct, powerful scent of their pack. It was a heavier, more somber scent than the crisp air of Stonehaven, but it also spoke of deep roots of unwavering resilience. Finally, we broke through the tree line. The Shadowwood main den stood before us, a formidable structure carved from dark wood and stone, nestled deep within the forest. A crowd of their pack members was gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. And then I saw him. Alpha Liam. He stood at the entrance, flanked by his beta, Kale, a gruff, imposing figure, and a younger, intense-looking warrior who I assumed was Finn. Liam was even more imposing than the rumors suggested. Tall, broad-shouldered, his presence radiated power. His dark hair was swept back from a strong, chiseled face. His eyes were the first thing I truly noticed. They were intense and so deep and held a profound sorrow that seemed to pull at the very air around him. There was no warmth, no welcoming smile, only a stoic, almost weary resolve. My father stepped forward, offering a curt nod. "Alpha Liam," he greeted, his voice resonating with respect. "Thank you for receiving us." "Alpha Theron," Liam replied, his voice firm, powerful, yet somehow flat. It carried the weight of command, but none of the easy charm the old stories spoke of. "Welcome to Shadowwood." Then his gaze shifted. It landed on me. I met his eyes directly, refusing to flinch. I felt the intensity of his scrutiny, the raw power emanating from him. I also saw something else, a flicker of something unreadable. A profound weariness, perhaps, or was it regret? He was beautiful, in a stark, formidable way, like a mountain carved by ancient winds. But his beauty was cold. My heart, which had been quietly aching with longing, now felt a strange pull towards that pain.
Chapter 3. The air in the main den had cleared of the crowd, but not of the tension. Our packs had withdrawn, leaving Elara and me alone in the vast space, surrounded by the quiet hum of dying embers and the weight of unspoken futures. The silence between us was no longer buffered by the presence of others. It was bare, intimate, inescapable. Elara stood before me, tall and unyielding, her dark eyes locked onto mine with unwavering defiance. Her scent, pine, stone, wildness, clung to the space between us, foreign yet grounding, a reminder that everything was changing. A new presence in my territory, a new reality I was being forced to confront. Still, my senses betrayed me, reaching for the soft trace of fresh mint and honeysuckle that once meant home, once meant her, my Luna. Alpha Theron's delegation had said their piece. The formalities were done. Now there was only this moment. No witnesses, no shields, just the truth I had rehearsed 100 times. I drew in a breath, the familiar sense of my den now mingled with hers, strange and unwelcome. But I had to do this, for her memory, for my pack, for whatever came next. "Elara," I said at last, my voice low, stripped of warmth or pretense, the voice of an alpha, not a grieving man. "Thank you for coming, and for considering this proposal." I saw a subtle shift in her eyes, a flicker of something unreadable. Her composure was remarkable, almost unnerving. Most she-wolves, even strong ones, would show some sign of apprehension, some deference. She showed none, only a quiet, unwavering intensity. "My father has explained the situation, Alpha Liam," she replied, her voice clear and steady, devoid of overt emotion, much like her father's. "The threat of the Western Pack is undeniable. An alliance between our packs is crucial for survival. I understand the necessity. necessity. She spoke the word with such stark practicality, it almost made me flinch. It was the very word Cale had used, the word that had driven me to this point. But for her to utter it so calmly, about her own mating, it amplified the hollowness within me. "Good," I said, my voice clipped. "Then you understand the terms, not just of the alliance, but of the mating." I paused, my gaze piercing, trying to convey the gravity of my next words. "I will be direct, Elara. I believe you deserve nothing less than the absolute truth." Her eyes remained locked on mine. "I appreciate honesty, Alpha." A bitter taste filled my mouth. Honesty. It was a cruel kindness, this honesty. But I had to deliver it. "A year ago," I began, my voice dropping, the words heavy with memory, "I lost my mate, my Luna. She was everything to me, my heart, my soul, my world. Her death left a void in me that I have not and cannot fill." I watched her face for any sign of revulsion, of pity, of understanding. Her expression remained composed, though I thought I saw a subtle tightening around her eyes, a fleeting shadow. "My pack, my elders, they demand this mating," I continued, forcing the words out, each one a confession of my brokenness. "They see the escalating threat, the need for a permanent alliance. They see the strength of your pack and your own strength. They believe you are the one who can bring stability, who can stand by my side as Luna." I paused, letting the words hang in the air, allowing her to absorb the weight of them. "And I agree with them logically. I see the strategic advantage. I see the strength you would bring to Shadowwood. I see the necessity for our people's survival." My voice hardened, the finality of my declaration settling over us like a shroud. "But I must be clear, Elara. My heart is closed. I cannot offer you love, not the kind of love a mate deserves." I saw a flicker then, something in her eyes, a fleeting emotion that I couldn't quite name. Was it disappointment? Resignation? I braced myself for her rejection, for the anger, the accusation that would surely follow. "I deserved it. I can offer you respect," I continued, my voice unwavering, though my insides twisted with regret. "Absolute respect. I will treat you with honor, always. I will value your counsel. I will rely on your strength. I will protect you with my life, as I would any member of my pack. I will be your partner in leadership, your alpha. But that is all I can give you. My heart, it is not available. It will never be available again." The words felt like a physical blow, even to me. I hated saying them. I hated the raw, unvarnished truth of them. I hated what I was doing to her, condemning her to a mating devoid of emotional warmth, a life beside a man who was half dead inside. I saw the quiet longing in her eyes, a fleeting, almost imperceptible shadow that confirmed my worst fears. I watched her, waiting for the inevitable, for the anger, for the tears, for the quiet, dignified refusal. Anything, but she simply stood there, her gaze steady, her composure unshakable. "I understand, Alpha Liam," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You have been honest, and I appreciate that more than you know." My brow furrowed. Appreciate that? What was she talking about? Most would be offended, insulted. "Unlike many," she continued, her voice gaining a quiet strength that surprised me, "you have not offered me false promises. You have not tried to deceive me with words of future affection you cannot give. And that speaks of an honorable man." I felt a jolt. An honorable man? I felt like anything but. I felt like a fraud, a broken shell. "My father," she went on, her gaze shifting slightly as if looking inward, "is a good alpha, a strong leader, but he is not overtly emotional. I was raised in a pack where emotions were often kept private, where duty and practicality reigned supreme. Your vulnerability, Alpha Liam, your raw honesty about your grief and your closed-off heart, it is unexpected, and it is something I understand." I stared at her, utterly bewildered. My vulnerability? I had shown her the emptiness, the desolation, not vulnerability, yet she saw it differently. "I agree to this mating, Alpha Liam," she stated, her voice clear and resolute, cutting through my confusion. "I agree to be your Luna, not for love but for duty, for the alliance, for the survival of our packs, and I will respect the boundaries you have set." My mind reeled. She agreed, just like that. After I had laid out the bleak reality of our future, a wave of relief washed over me, cold and immediate, quickly followed by a fresh surge of guilt. Relief for the pack, for the alliance. Guilt for her, for what I was condemning her to. You understand what this means?" I asked, needing to be absolutely certain, needing to ensure there was no misunderstanding, no lingering hope on her part that I could not fulfill. There will be no pretense, no false hope. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, a ghost of a curve that softened her fierce features. And in that fleeting moment, something shifted within me, a strange, unfamiliar warmth, a tiny flicker in the vast emptiness. "I understand, Alpha Liam," she repeated, her voice unwavering. "I accept. My commitment is to the Alliance, to the Pack, and to you as my Alpha and partner. I will not ask for what you cannot give." Her words were a balm and a torment all at once. She understood, she accepted, but the quiet longing I had seen in her eyes. "Very well," I said, my voice regaining its alpha authority, though my mind was still reeling. "Then the alliance is sealed. Welcome to Shadowwood, Luna Elara." I extended my hand, a formal gesture. She took it, her grip firm, strong. Her touch was cool, competent, without any lingering warmth. It was a handshake between two leaders, two partners in a necessary Alpha. Theron entered the room and stepped forward, a rare, almost imperceptible nod of approval on his face. "The Stonehaven Pack is honored, Alpha Liam. May this alliance bring strength and prosperity to both our peoples." The elders of both packs murmured their assent, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and solemnity. Kale clapped me on the shoulder, a silent message of approval. Finn, however, remained stoic, his gaze still assessing Elara. "Kale will show you to your den, Luna Elara," I stated, my voice formal, detached, "and we will discuss the details of your integration into the pack tomorrow morning. I trust you will find our warriors capable." "I look forward to it, Alpha," she replied, her gaze still steady, still holding that quiet intensity. As Kale led Elara and her delegation away, I watched her go. She walked with the same confident stride, her head held high. She was strong.
Chapter 4. As Kale, Liam's gruff but efficient, stepped forward to lead me away, I turned back to my father and Ryan. My father, Alpha Theron, gave me a curt, almost imperceptible nod, his version of approval. His eyes held a silent message of pride and expectation. He was a man of action, not sentiment, but I understood what he meant. "Father," I said, my voice steady, "I will not disappoint you. Stonehaven's strength will be honored here." "I know, Elara," he replied, his voice deep. "Be strong, be wise, we depart at dawn." I turned next to Ryan. Concern darkened his usually teasing expression. He was more than a friend. He was the brother of my heart, the one who had always seen beyond the armor I wore to the yearning beneath. "Rian," I said gently, stepping into his arms without hesitation. His hug was tight, protective, a wordless protest. "I always worry about you," he murmured into my hair. "You're too stubborn for your own good. Just remember who you are and what you deserve." He pulled back to study my face. "I can stay," he offered. "A few days, just until—" "I am not a pup, Ryan," I interrupted with a soft, wry smile. "I can navigate difficult terrain, both physical and emotional." I squeezed his arm, our unspoken promise, and turned away before I let sentiment soften my resolve. Kale said nothing as he led me through Shadowwood territory, past training grounds, communal fires, and watchful pack members whose eyes followed me with curiosity, some with wariness. I met each gaze head-on, unflinching. I was not here to beg for belonging. I was here to lead. Eventually, Kale stopped before a large den carved into the base of a great ancient oak. "Your den, Luna Elara," he said. "It connects directly to the Alpha's quarters." My heart gave a strange flutter. Practical, of course, for strategy, for safety. And yet, the proximity made something inside me shift. It was too soon to call it yearning, too foolish, too dangerous. "Thank you, Beta Kale," I replied, my tone neutral. He gave me a final long look, measuring, not unkind, and then left. The door was heavy, but it opened smoothly. Inside, the den was unexpectedly warm. The air carried a faint trace of sandalwood and something else, something that was uniquely him, cool stone and distant storms. It was a clean, well-ordered space, just like the man I had agreed to bind myself to. The sleeping furs were thick and well-maintained, the shelves sturdy, the furniture plain but purposeful. No unnecessary comfort, no softness. A den, I muttered aloud. Functional. I wandered in, running my fingers over the soft pelts, grounding myself, but my thoughts weren't in the room. They were still with him. Liam. His words had been like a blade, delivered without cruelty, but with precision. "My heart is closed." That was what he'd said. A fortress sealed by grief. And yet, in his eyes I had seen the crack in the stone. Sorrow lived there, deep, raw, and honest. and strangely, that had moved me more than any promise of affection would have. In a world where strength was prized and emotion buried, he had shown me the most dangerous truth of all, his brokenness, and my wolf had felt it. The moment his voice softened, when his grief brushed against mine, my wolf stirred, a low, curious shift inside me. Not yearning, not desire. He is in pain, she whispered from within. But he speaks the truth. He does not hide. It unsettled me. My wolf was not easily moved. She was sharp-edged and proud, like me. Yet something in Liam had reached her. A wounded echo calling out across a bond that had not yet fully formed. I had not expected her to lean forward to press against the bond like a curious nose at a door not yet open. But she did, not with hope, not with foolishness, with knowing. "This will not be easy," she said. "No," I agreed. But neither of us turned away. I unpacked in silence, placing my armor and blades along one wall, my spare clothes folded into a low chest, my worn, leather-bound journal on the table. This was no longer a temporary arrangement. This was my home now. This was my alliance. I sat at the edge of the sleeping firs and stared at the stone wall separating my den from his. Just a wall, just a few feet of distance. And yet it felt like the widest canyon in the world. Still, I did not feel afraid. This was not the life I had dreamed of, but it was the life I had chosen, for Stonehaven, for peace, and perhaps, just perhaps, for the wounded Alpha. My wolf remembered it. So did I.
Chapter 5. She had agreed. No bargaining, no protests. After I laid myself bare, warning her of the emptiness she was stepping into, no love, no connection, she had simply nodded. She called me honorable, said she understood my vulnerability. Vulnerability. A strange word. I'd shown her nothing but ruin, and yet she saw something I didn't. As Kale guided her into the den, I watched her retreat. She didn't look back. Her shoulders squared, steps certain. The elders murmured among themselves, a shared sigh of relief in their expressions. One weight lifted. 1,000 more remained. Finn stayed silent, his gaze trailing Elara with the sharp edge of a soldier sizing up an unknown. He'd always held quiet respect for my former Luna. His loyalty ran deep, and Elara would have to earn it, not through title, but presence. I turned from the threshold. The pact was sealed. The easy part was over. Kale returned a short while later. She's settled. Her den is ready. And her father? Alpha Theron's already left. Ryan is staying. Protective, that one. It's obvious. I grunted. I'd seen it, the way he embraced her, eyes tight with concern. A bond forged long before this agreement, a kind of devotion I couldn't replicate. Good, I muttered, rubbing the ache behind my eyes. Tomorrow, she meets the Corps, healers, scouts, head warriors. She'll need to know everything, routines, vulnerabilities. Let her walk the pack like she's already one of us. I'll see to it, Kale said. She seems strong. She is. The words came easily, but they burned. Strong, capable, everything a Luna should be, everything she had been, too. I dismissed Kale and retreated to my own quarters. The heavy door closed behind me with a hollow thud. My den, now joined to hers, suddenly felt too small, too loud with silence. Her scent lingered, pine, stone, and something stubborn, something alive. It drifted in through the shared wall like a reminder I hadn't asked for. My wolf stirred, not with curiosity, not with recognition, with unease. She was not ours, not yet. Not ever, my wolf growled quietly, curling tighter in the hollow of my soul. He was still grieving, still tethered to a memory that refused to loosen its grip. Her laughter, my first mate, still echoed in his bones. Her absence was not something we'd accepted. It was something we endured, hour by hour. I sank onto the sleeping firs, the hearth's flicker casting long shadows. My mind circled restlessly. I had expected resistance, maybe even rage. But Elara, she had met my grief with stillness, with understanding. Not sympathy, no, she was too proud for that. But recognition, like she knew what it meant to carry pain like armor. I would have respected her regardless. But now that respect was weight. And my wolf felt it too, felt the stirrings of something dangerous, obligation. She deserves warmth, my wolf whispered. We cannot give it. To sleep was impossible. So I rose, retrieving the training blade from its place beside the hearth. My body moved through the familiar forms, strikes, pivots, defensive rolls. Each motion carved control out of chaos, a physical rhythm to drown the echoing thoughts. But even in the flurry, my wolf paced behind my ribs, not angry, not restless, mourning. She is not her, he said again, and he was right. Hours passed before Kale returned, his knock quiet. Alpha, The schedule for Luna Elara is complete. She'll begin with Seraphina, then Finn and the others. I nodded, sweat clinging to my skin. My muscles ached, but it was nothing compared to the throb in my chest. Thank you. Kale lingered a moment. She's calm, steady. She understands duty. She does. He watched me a beat longer than necessary. It's a good match. For the pack. For the pack. I didn't respond, because anything I said would have sounded like a lie. When he left, I set the blade down and returned to the hearth. The fire was low now, a slow dance of orange light and shadow. I stared into it, hollowed out. Duty, honor, survival. They used to mean something. Now they were just pillars propping up a half-life. My wolf lay silent now, not comforted, just quiet, curled in the ashes of who we had been. He didn't want Elara, not because she wasn't worthy, but because he still belonged to another. I would give her everything I could, protection, leadership, respect. She would never suffer nicked under my watch. But the heart she might hope for, it was buried beneath stones neither of us knew how to lift. And that, perhaps, was the cruelest truth.
Chapter 6. The morning light filtered through the dense canopy of oaks, casting long, shifting shadows across my new den. I had slept little, thoughts turning like leaves in a storm. Liam's voice still echoed in my mind, measured, cold, honest. And mine, answering with an acceptance I hadn't known I had in me. But this was it. Shadowwood was now my home. The pact had been sealed. The mourning territory of a grieving alpha was now the place I was meant to serve. Somewhere beneath the surface, my wolf stirred. Not restless, not alarmed, but curious. She had been quiet yesterday, cautious. But this morning I felt her more aware than before. She did not feel fear. She did not feel doubt. What she felt, what I felt echoing through the bond between us was recognition of place, of structure, of him. A knock came. Not from the connecting door to Liam's quarters, but from the entrance of my den. Luna Elara? Kale's voice was gravel and steel, less cold than Liam's, but no less disciplined. May I enter? Yes, I called, tightening the bracers on my forearms. Kale stepped inside, already dressed in his patrol gear, the insignia of Shadowwood prominent on his chest. Your schedule, he began, wasting no time. The Alpha asked that I guide you today. You'll be meeting the core pack members, Seraphina, Finn, the patrol leads. We want the pack to see you, to know you. First impressions matter. I nodded. Of course. I wouldn't expect less. Kale gave a quick, approving incline of his head. We'll start with Seraphina, our head healer, then Finn in the defense circle. I'll be with you throughout. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. You'll be busy. I like busy, I said dryly. We stepped into the brisk morning and I inhaled the scent of Shadowwood, earth, pine, smoke, and something more elusive that set my wolf's attention on edge. It wasn't danger. It was alertness. As though something ancient in the forest was watching and weighing me. My wolf leaned into it, ears perked and eyes bright behind my own. We hadn't made it 10 steps when a familiar figure leaned against one of the outer posts of the den, arms crossed, looking far too comfortable. Really? I said, arching a brow. Ryan grinned. Miss me already? I exhaled in exasperation. I thought you left with my father. I was going to, he said with a shrug. But then I realized you'd be here all alone, being very serious and noble. I figured someone should be around to keep you humble. I don't need a babysitter, I muttered, half teasing, half glaring. Aren't there scouts you could annoy on the way out? I'll be gone after today, he said, stepping forward with a hand pressed dramatically to his chest. But I wanted to see how long it would take before you asked when I was leaving. You're insufferable, I said, smirking. You love it. Before I could reply, a shadow shifted nearby. My wolf felt it before I saw him, tension blooming beneath my skins, an almost electric hum. I turned and stilled. Liam stood a few paces away, partially concealed by the angle of the path. He must have arrived silently, as if summoned by the sound of my laughter. His expression was unreadable, but his gaze lingered on me a beat longer than necessary, then on Ryan. There was no hostility, just stillness, contained, coiled energy. And my wolf, silent all morning, watched him, with instinctive attention, recognition. Alpha? Kale said, acknowledging him with a subtle nod. Liam gave the smallest of nods and turned, vanishing between the trees, but even after he disappeared, my wolf's awareness didn't fade. Her presence stayed sharp, hovering behind my own eyes, curious, pulling. Well, Ryan muttered beside me. That was something. Don't start, I warned him. Wouldn't dream of it. Kale cleared his throat. Serafina is waiting. I gave Ryan one last look. Try not to get thrown out. I only make some people nervous, he said with a grin. Kale led me through the heart of Shadowwood as the pack began to stir. Warriors trained in tight formations. The scent of morning meals and crushed moss filled the air. The wolves watched me, not hostile, but measuring. I didn't flinch. My wolf didn't either. She liked the scent of the forest, the rhythm of the people here. Different from Stonehaven, yes, but rooted, solid, real. Eventually, we arrived at the central hall where Serafina waited. She was ancient, but her presence held no fragility. Her aura, even more than her eyes, saw everything, and my wolf immediately recognized the power in her, lowered her metaphorical head in quiet deference. We spoke. She spoke. We shared. And when she spoke of Liam's grief, something in me hollowed. Alpha Liam carries such a scar, Serafina said, and perhaps so do you. And when I said nothing, my wolf responded instead, pressing a little closer to the surface, quiet, steady, acknowledging. The rest of the morning belonged to strategy, to warriors, to Finn. He tested me, as I expected. I answered in kind, not with pride, but clarity, not with dominance, but earned knowledge. My wolf observed them all with sharp interest, especially Finn, who carried the scent of war and a protective loyalty that ran deep. She liked that. She respected that. By the end, the tension eased, walls began to shift, I began to belong, and through it all, Liam hovered. Silent, present, never interfering. My wolf, she watched him too. She didn't reach for him, didn't push, but she noticed his every movement, not as a mate, not yet, but as someone important. Her instincts didn't question his strength or his sorrow. They simply accepted it. And grew more curious. By evening, I was exhausted, but the good kind, the kind that said, I did what I came to do. Liam found me near the steps of my den. As I turned, our eyes met. You handled yourself well today, Luna Elara, he said, voice low. I inclined my head. Thank you. His expression didn't change, but my wolf stirred, something in the cadence of his voice, the weight of his presence, a silent promise, perhaps, or a warning. Rest well, he added. Tomorrow we continue. He walked into the trees again, swallowed by the shadows. I watched him go. My heart remained quiet, but my wolf? She followed. Not physically, not longingly, just attentively. And I knew whatever came next, my wolf would not ignore him.
Chapter 7. The scent of pine and stone still lingered in my den, a subtle, persistent reminder of her presence, even long after she had retreated to her own quarters. I sat by the dying embers of the hearth, the silence pressing in around me, magnifying everything I worked so hard to keep buried. You handled yourself well today, Luna Elara. That's what I'd said. A fact, nothing more. And yet, even that small acknowledgement had taken effort. It chipped at the walls I'd built, walls meant to keep her safe from false hope, and me from feeling too much. But I had watched her. She hadn't come into Shadowwood to prove herself. She had simply shown up, steady, prepared. She asked the right questions, challenged Finn without arrogance, and handled our warriors with effortless grace. Her competence spoke volumes, and they listened. And I had noticed every moment of it. I remembered when she pointed out the ravine the Western pack might use. Her finger traced the path with calm precision. Finn had bristled at first, ready to argue, but she was right, and he knew it. The grudging respect in his tone had been obvious. She's right, Alpha, he'd said, jaw tight. I hadn't responded, not aloud. But inside something shifted. It wasn't just her tactical mind. It was the way she carried herself. Quiet dignity, respectful strength. The kind of calm presence that doesn't shout for attention but commands it anyway. And earlier that morning, I had turned the corner near the training grounds just in time to catch her in conversation with Ryan. They stood close, laughter spilling between them like an old song. Ryan teased her, and she shoved him lightly. She was smiling, truly smiling. It was a look I hadn't seen from her yet in this territory, unburdened, familiar. My wolf stilled, then growled. Not from anger, from instinct. From some buried part of us that didn't like seeing her light up that way around someone else. I clenched my fists and forced myself to watch with detachment. I had no claim. I had made that clear. No bond, no love, no expectations. But my wolf didn't care for clarity. He paced under my skin, agitated, not because she was adapting, but because she was adapting without us. She deserves that laughter, that warmth, that connection. Wolves aren't meant to be alone. and the last thing I want is for her to feel isolated in a place already shadowed by grief. So I turned before they saw me and told myself I was relieved. But the truth lingered longer than I wanted to admit. That image of her, open, radiant, haunted me all day. A reminder of what she might offer someone who wasn't broken, someone who could meet that warmth and reflect it back. And God's help me, for a fleeting second I resented the ghost of the man I am now. By the time dusk fell, I was too restless to sleep. I paced, read reports I didn't absorb. Finally, I reached for the training blade by the hearth. The weight was familiar. The forms gave structure to my chaos, each strike a way to bleed something out of me before it ate me from the inside. It was well past nightfall when Kale found me, breathless and sweat-drenched, moving like a man possessed. "Alpha," he said, "you push yourself too hard." "The Western Pack doesn't rest," I replied. "Neither can I." He didn't argue, just stood in the quiet a moment before adding, "Luna Elara made quite an impression today. Serafina was impressed. Finn too. She's already making a difference. She is capable. More than that," Kale said with a rare smile. "She outmaneuvered Finn before breakfast. I think he's still recovering." I almost smiled. Almost. But I held it back. "She's integrating well," I said. Kale studied me. "Yes, and she's trying. She doesn't push, she doesn't pry, but she's present, committed." "I know." My voice was quieter. "She said she understood, that I couldn't give her what she might want. But knowing that and feeling it every day are two very different things." Keel nodded slowly. "It's not your fault, Liam. You're honoring your grief, and she's honoring your truth." That made my chest tighten. "Still feels like I'm stealing something from her," I muttered. He didn't have an answer to that. No one did. He left with a soft, respectful nod, and I was alone again. I returned to my den, hands raw from the blade, muscles burning. But the ache inside me remained untouched. Elara was just on the other side of that door, close enough to hear her breathing if I allowed myself to listen. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. That wall between us, thin as it was, might be the last piece of distance I had left to offer her. Because every time she smiles at someone else, my wolf stirs, and every time she turns her quiet strength toward me, it hurts. Not because I don't want it, but because I do, and I can't afford to. Not with this heart still buried with the woman I lost, not with a war pressing at our borders. So I would go on as I am, her alpha in every way but one, and watch, helpless, as the woman I respect more than I'll ever say slowly becomes the Luna I never expected.
Chapter 8. Ryan left early morning. He didn't make a show of it, just knocked once, leaned in the doorway of my den and said, "Don't get too bored being mated to a rock." His smirk didn't quite hide the tightness around his eyes. I grinned. "Try not to fall into a ravine on your way down. You Stonehaven males are all clumsy feet and fragile egos," he snorted. "Says the she-wolf who tripped over her own blade during training last winter." I rolled my eyes, stepping forward to tug his hood into place. "Just be safe." His teasing faded. "You too." He kissed my forehead, the same way he always had since we were pups, then pulled away quickly, too quickly, and disappeared into the morning fog with the rest of the departing escort. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ryan had been my tether to my old life, to the parts of me I hadn't yet figured out how to carry forward. With him gone, the den felt cavernous, echoing with absence. For the first time since arriving, I felt alone. I didn't eat. I didn't train. I sat curled near the hearth, arms wrapped around my knees, trying not to let the stillness creep too far into my bones. A soft knock broke the silence. I didn't answer right away. The door opened anyway. Liam stood there. No armor. No rigid alpha posture. Just Liam. Broad shoulders cloaked in a thick wrap, a steaming mug in one hand. He stepped in without a word and held the cup out to me. "I heard you skip breakfast." I blinked. "I wasn't hungry." He said nothing, just set the mug down on the low table and took a seat on the opposite bench. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't need it. "You miss him," he said quietly. I nodded, the ache in my chest raw and dull. He was the last piece of home I had here. "He made you laugh," Liam said, not as an accusation, just an observation. I gave a small smile. He always does. A beat of silence, then, almost too soft to catch, "It suits you." I looked at him, startled. There was no tension in his shoulders, no mask, just a man sitting with me in my grief, not trying to fix it, only holding space for it. "You don't have to be strong every second," he said, still looking into the fire. Even wolves as strong as you need rest." "That's ironic," I murmured. "Coming from you." His jaw twitched, but he didn't deny it. We sat like that for a while, drinking tea, not filling the silence. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it mattered. It mattered because it was him, choosing to come, choosing to stay. When he stood to leave, his hand brushed the edge of the table, fingers lingering on the smooth wood. "Elara," he said, my name a quiet thing in his mouth. "If you need anything, ask." Then he was gone. "What if I ask for your heart?" The thought came unbidden, silent, not spoken aloud, but it echoed through me like a whispered dare. After that morning, I threw myself into the rhythm of Shadowwood life. Every hour was accounted for. Training sessions, patrol briefings, strategy meetings. The structure steadied me, gave me purpose. The warriors, once wary, began to warm. Finn, in particular, had started treating me like a peer, not a threat. One afternoon, he asked, "How would you secure the northern pass? The terrain's rough. Rock slide from last winter makes it dangerous." I leaned over the map, tracing the contours. "Use it. Position scouts with line of sight to trigger a secondary slide. Cut off the flanking route and funnel them into your forward formation." Finn blinked. "You'd risk wolves up there?" "I'd choose wolves who know the risk and can execute cleanly. In Stonehaven, we train for this." He nodded slowly. "Liam needs to hear this." "Then tell him," I said. "It's his pack." Finn gave me a look, almost amused. "He listens to you more than you think." During training sessions, I pushed hard. I fought, I bled, I laughed. Once, after a grueling set, Lyra flopped beside me. "Luna Elara, how are you not dead?" I grinned. "Years of falling off cliffs." Anya chimed in. "We thought Stonehaven wolves were all elevation and no edge, but you're sharp." "I'm both," I teased. "Sharp and elevated." They laughed. I laughed with them. And I didn't feel like a guest in Shadowwood, not anymore. I felt like Luna. "He used to laugh like that, you know?" Anya said suddenly. "Alpha, Liam, before everything, he had this dimple right here." She poked her cheek. My heart stuttered. The dimple. I'd seen the ghost of it once, a twitch, a near smile. "He carries a heavy burden," I said softly. Lyra nodded. "We just miss him." So do I thought, though I'd never known the version they were mourning. My interactions with Liam remained formal, distant, polished like marble. He ensured my den was stocked. My schedules were balanced. My presence in the pack seamless. But every act of kindness came with that wall, tall, silent, impenetrable. Except when it wasn't. Like the night I found him training alone, moving through his forms beneath the moonlight. The way his body moved, precise, powerful, tireless, it was beautiful. Not just in the physical sense, but in the quiet discipline of it. When I stepped forward, he paused, not startled, just aware. "You should be resting," he said. I could say the same. His expression didn't change, but I caught the barest flicker of warmth in his eyes. We spoke briefly. Nothing grand, nothing revealing. And my wolf? She watched him more closely now. Ears pricked. She could feel it too, that slow shift like the turn of a season you can't name yet but feel in your bones. He still kept his distance, but I wasn't reaching for grand love anymore. Just the echo of a smile, just a chance to earn the dimple. And maybe a moment when he might reach back.
Chapter 9. The quiet hum of the den, once a source of peace, had shifted. It wasn't just mine anymore. The scent of pine and that distinct, wild earthiness of Elara had seeped into the air, threaded into the walls, softening edges I hadn't realized were so sharp. It was no longer empty here, and that truth was both unsettling and oddly comforting. She had become part of the rhythm of Shadowwood so effortlessly, it was almost unnatural. She didn't demand space, she simply filled it. Every day I found myself unconsciously attuned to her, where she went, who she trained with, how she moved through the halls. I wasn't seeking her out, I told myself. I was observing, responsible, attentive. But the truth was murkier. She was a breath of fresh air in a territory that had long forgotten how to breathe. I watched her with the warriors, focused, formidable, composed, and part of me admired her, fiercely. Elara didn't charm the pack into respecting her. She earned it. I saw it first in Finn, who had once idolized my late mate and distrusted anything that might replace her. At first, he had bristled at Elara's ideas. Now, he consulted her. "She's impressive," Finn admitted one afternoon. "That northern pass strategy of hers, it's clever. I wouldn't have considered the ridge angle." He wasn't the only one. Kale had grown more casual in her presence, less guarded. Yesterday, he even laughed at something she said, a short, surprised sound I hadn't heard from him in weeks. He'd later mentioned, almost offhandedly, "She sees things differently. It's refreshing. You should talk to her more." I hadn't answered him. What could I say? That every word she spoke made me feel like I was betraying the woman I had buried? That every time I caught myself admiring Elara's strength or catching her scent in the hallway, I felt like I was cheating both my past and present? She deserved so much more. Any alpha would have cherished her, protected her, loved her, and yet she was mated to me, to this broken, emotionally numb shell of a man who couldn't even meet her eyes for too long without feeling like a liar. That was the worst of it, the dual guilt. I couldn't stop the way I noticed Elara, her fierce grace, the way she challenged Finn without ego, the soft way she spoke to the pups in the village. But each time I did, it felt like another crack against the memory of my mate, and simultaneously a disservice to Elara, who had done nothing but try to integrate, try to understand me, try to carry her role with dignity. She had been placed into this bond like a piece on a war table. She had embraced the burden, even while knowing she wouldn't receive love in return. She hadn't said so, not directly, but I saw it. In the quiet glances when she thought I wasn't looking, in the patience she gave me, in her wolf, who I sensed lingered just beneath her skin, observing me in silence, not judging, just waiting. Kale was right. Her acceptance was a gift, a painful, undeserved gift. Last night, when she'd come upon me training, her words had burrowed deep. "We are partners in this, are we not? I am here to share the weight, not just to observe it." I'd felt the sincerity in her voice, the steadiness. And it struck me how easy it would be to lean on that, on her, how dangerous it would be to want more, because that was the path to losing everything again. I found myself at the door to her den more often these days, never knocking, just standing there, listening, wondering. She was right on the other side, and yet so far removed from the space in my heart I had sealed off long ago. I hated that I couldn't give her what she might one day ask for. I hated more the thought that maybe I already wanted to. When Kale brought me the latest patrol reports this morning, he said only, "She's good for the pack. And maybe, Alpha, she could be good for you too." I didn't respond. I just stared at the paper, words blurring in front of my eyes. I had committed myself to duty, to protecting the legacy I had left, and to the memory of the woman I lost. But Elara made me question if survival was enough. She stirred something I didn't want to name, something that made my wolf restless when I saw her training beside the others, something that made the silence of my den feel incomplete. She was a constant contradiction, comfort and disruption, steadiness and temptation, and I didn't know if I should shield her from the wreckage of who I was, or if she was already quietly stepping into the ruins, unafraid.
Chapter 10. After days of relentless training and intense strategy sessions in Shadowwood, our course of action against the Western Pack was beginning to take shape. The threat they posed could no longer be treated as rumor or distant danger. It was real, growing, and closing in fast. While the warriors refined their formations and scouted their borders, Liam's focus turned toward something more elusive: magical defense. That's where the artificer came in. A reclusive warlock whispered about in stories and strategy circles alike. The artificer was said to wield ancient magic, strong enough to bind territories with wards drawn from the ley lines themselves. He lived deep within the Moonstone Pack, a territory known for its strength, pride, and a brutal sort of beauty that shaped powerful wolves. Liam had secured an audience with the artificer, and I was to accompany him, not only as Luna of Shadowwood, but as his partner in this new alliance. This journey felt vastly different from the one that had first brought me to Shadowwood. Then I had been a reluctant guest, a hesitant would-be mate. Now I rode as Luna, as someone who had earned her place through effort and will. I had found a rhythm with the warriors. I had earned Finn's grudging respect. I was no longer uncertain. I was steady. But I still wasn't sure where I stood with Liam. The Moonstone Pack's territory awakened something inside me the moment we crossed its borders. Harsh winds carved paths through tall stone ridges, pine forests reached skyward like ancient guardians, and the ground beneath us seemed older, rougher, alive. It reminded me of Stonehaven, my original pack. It hurt to see such a familiar landscape and know I no longer had a place in it. But it also steadied me. These were lands I understood. When we arrived at the den, carved into a massive glowing moon-white rock, I felt it. Magic. Low and thrumming, the air charged with invisible threads of power. The artificer was close, and he was no myth. One of the attending stewards informed us that we would be sharing a den chamber, an old custom for bonded pairs among allies in Moonstone. I caught the faint tension in Liam's shoulders at the news, but he simply nodded. The den was a private room etched from stone, lit by enchanted sconces that flickered silver. Inside, the air was cool, the bed large but simple, and only one fur roll lay beside a small hearth. Liam moved first, setting his bag down and beginning to unroll a second fur beside the fire. "I'll take the floor," he said without looking at me. "It's cold stone," I said, stepping toward him. "I've slept colder." I sighed, shaking my head. "It's fine, we can share the bed, it's large enough, and we've faced worse than this." He paused, then nodded once. No protest, no implications, just quiet acceptance. We both understood that this was nothing more than necessity. Later that night, lying side by side on opposite sides of the bed, the distance between us felt far greater than the inches of space. In the silence, I found myself whispering, "What was she like, your mate?" For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer, but then his voice emerged, low and rough. "She was sunlight in wolfskin, always laughing. She made every room feel warm, not because of power, but because of her joy. She had this way of seeing through people, through me. She never looked away, even from the parts I didn't want anyone to see." He paused. "She used to say I carried the storm, but she wasn't afraid of it. She walked right into it." My throat tightened. The ache in his voice was unmistakable. I blinked back tears, not from jealousy, but from something more profound. Sorrow, for him, for her, for everything lost. "She must have been extraordinary," I said softly. "She was." Tears slipped silently down my cheek. I cried not just for the ghost between us, but for myself, because I knew then, with terrifying clarity, that I was falling in love with a man whose heart still belonged to someone else. And worse, my wolf was too. "We are already his," she whispered inside me, "even if he cannot be ours." He fell asleep beside me, his breathing deep and even. But I remained awake for a long time, watching the rise and fall of his chest, mourning the love he had lost, and the love I might never fully receive. The next morning we walked into the heart of the Moonstone Pack's territory, where the valley shimmered with pale, magical light. The stone beneath our feet pulsed softly with contained power. The den hall loomed ahead, carved from white quartz veined with crystal, glowing under the mid-morning sun. Alpha Daemon met us at the threshold, a tall, imposing man with an aura that exuded quiet dominance. Beside him stood his Luna, Iris, graceful, warm, and radiant. "Alpha Liam, Luna Elara," Daemon greeted with a nod. "Welcome to Moonstone. It is an honor." "Alpha Daemon, Luna Iris," Liam returned. "We appreciate your hospitality. The threat from the Western Pack is growing. Strengthening our alliance and our wards is imperative." Iris offered a kind smile. "Then you've come to the right place. Artificer awaits." Inside the grand hall, the air thrummed with active magic. Crystals embedded in the stone walls glowed faintly, casting dappled light across the chamber. At the large round table in the center sat a man unlike any I had ever seen, the Artificer. He was tall, lean, and cloaked in robes of deep blue threaded with silver. His skin was pale, his hair streaked with silver and black, and his eyes were timeless. Not merely old, ancient. He radiated power, the kind that unsettled your bones and quieted your thoughts. He didn't look kind. He looked dangerous. Beside him sat the Moonstone Beta Luna. She was strong, every inch a warrior. Her posture was upright, her eyes sharp, her energy commanding. But when the Artificer turned to her, everything shifted. The terrifying warlock, whose magic hummed in the very walls, softened. The angles of his face eased, and something tender bloomed in his expression. She leaned toward him slightly, as if magnetized by a pull only she could feel, and his hand found hers beneath the table. Their touch wasn't overt, it wasn't theatrical, but it was intimate in a way that made my chest tighten. He whispered something in her ear. She smiled softly, not the smile of a warrior, but of a woman utterly seen and loved, and he looked at her like she was the only thing in existence that ever mattered. It stunned me, the contrast. This powerful ancient creature, so fearsome and still, turned to water in her presence. And she, fierce and composed, let herself melt into him completely. They were equals, balances, storm and stone, and in the space between them, love burned steady and bright. The meeting began in earnest. Liam laid out our situation with careful precision, and the artificer listened intently. I added what insight I could, offering defense patterns from Stonehaven that might support magical integration. He nodded in acknowledgement, his ancient eyes pausing on me just long enough to make my skin prickle. Through it all, I watched the mated pairs, Damon and Iris, bold and open, full of touches and laughter and shared glances that spoke of passion still burning bright. The artificer and his mate, silent, steady, old as the mountains, but so clearly in love that it radiated from them like a low-burning fire. And Liam and me, polite, respectful, efficient, but not close, not intimate, not truly bonded. And when I looked at him under the candlelight, I saw it, just for a moment, a flicker of longing in his gaze as it strayed toward the mated pairs. But it wasn't for me, it was for what he had lost. And that, more than anything, broke something in me. After the formalities ended, Damon and Iris approached us. Iris took my hand gently, her warmth genuine. "Shadowwood is lucky to have you, Luna Elara," she said. "Thank you," I murmured, the kindness almost unbearable. Damon clapped a hand on Liam's shoulder. "With her beside you, your pack will be impenetrable." Liam only nodded. "We won't forget your support." The walk back to the den was silent. I longed to ask him what he saw in Damon's possessiveness, in Artificer's quiet reverence. I wanted to know if he missed that kind of bond. But I couldn't ask. He had made his lines clear, and I had agreed to respect them. At the entrance to his chamber, he paused. "Get some rest, Luna Elara," he said quietly. "Tomorrow we begin implementing the Artificer's wards." "Yes, Alpha," I whispered. He nodded, then stepped inside and closed the door gently behind him. I entered my own quarters, the scent of stone and pine wrapping around me like a memory I couldn't name. I sat on the edge of the furs, heart aching. I had seen the kind of love I longed for, and I had seen the man beside me still mourn its loss. But I was Elara, I was strong, I was Luna, I had chosen this bond, and I would honor it. Still, I clung to one impossible hope, my small rebellion, my private vow, to one day see his dimple again, to hear his laugh, to bring even a flicker of warmth back into his storm-shadowed eyes, even if I could never have his heart. Maybe I could be his peace.
Chapter 11. Last night. The stone floor was unforgiving and cold, but I insisted I would sleep there. Elara, however, was resolute. "We're not strangers," she said softly, her voice steady despite the chill. So we shared the den, lying back to back, wrapped in furs, yet feeling the cold space between us, both physical and emotional. She asked about her, my mate, whose presence still lingered like a ghost in every quiet moment. I told Elara what I could, careful not to shatter the fragile silence that held us both. She listened with a quiet sorrow, her tears falling unnoticed, and I pretended not to see them. Long after her breath slowed into sleep, I lay awake, wrestling with the ache of loss and the reluctant warmth growing for the fierce, loyal wolf beside me. I hated that I could not give her what she deserved. At the heart of the Moonstone Pack, we were welcomed by Alpha Damon and his Luna, Iris. Their bond was tangible, a fierce, radiant force. Damon's protective presence softened by Iris's warmth, their fingers intertwined naturally, their every movement in harmony. I caught Elara's gaze lingering on them, the quiet longing in her eyes unmistakable. I hated that I was not the one who could offer her such love. Then Artificer entered, the warlock whose power seemed to ripple through the air itself. His presence was raw, intense, almost unsettling. Yet beside him stood the Moonstone Beta Luna, a woman formidable in her own right, but softened utterly by the warlock's quiet strength. Their bond was a steady current beneath the surface, a deep trust forged over centuries. Watching them, I glimpsed a partnership I wished I could give Elara. Not just protection and respect, but sanctuary and understanding. Later that evening, I found myself alone with Damon in his private chambers, the flickering firelight casting shadows across the stone walls. We spoke quietly about strategy and alliances, our plans for defending against the Western Pack's inevitable advance, the territories we'd need to fortify, the allies we could count on. The conversation halted mid-sentence when the temperature plummeted. The very air seemed to thicken, pressing against my chest like a physical weight. The flames in the fireplace didn't flicker, they froze, suspended in unnatural stillness. Even the shadows on the walls stopped moving, as if reality itself had paused. Then they appeared, not walked in, not materialized slowly. They simply were, as if they had always been standing there, and we had only just gained the ability to perceive them. 3 figures of impossible presence filled the chamber. Lord Salvatore stood to the left, tall and lean, draped in darkness that seemed to drink the light around him. His Mediterranean features were carved with divine precision, but his obsidian eyes held the weight of millennia. Every judgment, every truth forced into the open, every balance restored through pain. When he looked at me, I felt every secret I'd ever buried rise to the surface of my mind. Lord Volkov commanded the center, broad-shouldered and imposing, his golden eyes burning like molten metal. Raw power radiated from him in waves, not the wild energy of a shifter, but something far more ancient and absolute. His very presence made my wolf want to submit, to roll over and expose its throat to a superior predator. And between them, ethereal and unsettling, stood Lady Morwen. Her features shifted subtly in the firelight. One moment dark hair and almond eyes, the next silver locks and pale skin like moonlight. She was beautiful in a way that made my mind struggle to hold on to her image, as if she existed slightly outside of normal reality. Damon straightened, his posture respectful but dignified. "My lords, my lady." His voice carried the deference due to higher authority, but he held his ground like the alpha he was. I felt the weight of their presence pressing against my wolf, but I held firm. These weren't just powerful supernaturals. They were the ultimate authority, the beings who governed the supernatural world's very existence. But I was still an alpha, and submission wasn't in my nature. Respect, however, was something I could give. "Alpha Liam," Salvatore's voice held a note of dry amusement, like a professor addressing a promising but reckless student. "You prepare for war." A slight smile played at the corner of his mouth. Despite his casual tone, when his obsidian eyes met mine, I felt the weight of every truth I'd ever tried to hide pressing against my consciousness. The smile was pleasant, but behind it lay the inexorable force of absolute judgment. Volkov stepped forward, his presence making the stone walls seem to vibrate. "The Western Pack has overstepped. Their alpha believes strength alone grants him the right to claim what isn't his." His golden eyes fixed on mine, and I met his gaze steadily. Alpha to alpha, though I could feel the vast difference in our power. "He is wrong, but your response will determine whether his error becomes a catastrophe." Lady Morwen's shifting gaze settled on me with what seemed like genuine concern, her voice carrying the warmth of a caring mentor. "The great secrecy must be maintained, dear Alpha," she said gently. "Humans are already asking questions about the unusual wolf activity in the Northern Territories. A war between packs." She paused, and though her tone remained soft and almost motherly, I felt the subtle shift in reality around us. The way the shadows seemed to bend toward her, the way my own memories felt suddenly fragile, as if she could pluck them from my mind like flowers from a garden. Well, we simply cannot allow that kind of visibility. "We're not starting this war," I said, my voice steady despite the pressure of their combined presence. I kept my shoulders back, my posture that of an alpha addressing equals, respectful but not subservient. "We're defending our territory, our people." Salvatore chuckled, a sound like velvet over steel. "Ah, the righteousness of the defender. How noble." His amusement was genuine, but there was something ancient and knowing in his expression. "Tell me, Alpha, in your experience, what's the practical difference between a wolf protecting his territory and a wolf expanding it?" He tilted his head, still smiling. "Because I've been keeping track for, several millennia now. The answer might surprise you." Despite his conversational tone, I felt the crushing weight of his gaze, as if he could see every justification I'd ever made, every lie I'd told myself about my motivations. But I held his stare, refusing to look away. Volkov's expression was granite. "The Codex Eternus is clear. Territorial disputes must be resolved without drawing undue attention. Handle this conflict as you see fit, but handle it quietly." "You have 3 months, sweetheart," Lady Morwen said, her voice carrying the fond affection of a grandmother offering cookies. 3 months to settle this matter without creating ripples that reach human awareness." Her smile was warm and encouraging, but as she spoke, I noticed the way the firelight seemed to bend around her, creating shadows that didn't quite match her movements. After that period, You'll simply need to have a little chat with us at the Nexus. Nothing too daunting, just a friendly conversation about how things went. The casual way she said it made my blood run cold. A little chat with the Lords was never just a conversation. The weight of their words settled over me, but I didn't bow under it. This wasn't a threat, it was a responsibility. The Lords were giving me the autonomy to handle the Western Pact situation, and while their power was absolute, they were treating me as an alpha worthy of that trust. I understand, I said. Do you? Salvatore's gaze never left mine. You bind fire to stone, Alpha, but even the strongest stone will crack if the fire burns too hot too long. I felt the truth of his words resonate in my chest. My grief, my rage, my desperate need for control, it was all there, burning inside me like a forge. And lately, with Elara's presence in my life, that fire had been changing, growing more complex. The fire within you serves a purpose, Volkov added, his voice like distant thunder. But purpose without direction becomes destruction, and destruction without limit becomes chaos. 3 months, Alpha. They began to fade, their forms becoming less substantial, but Lady Morwen lingered a moment longer. Her shifting eyes fixed on mine with gentle understanding, and her voice carried the tender warmth of a mother comforting a wounded child. Alpha, she said softly, her smile both sad and knowing. Some memories are meant to be cherished, not chains to bind you. The heart that holds too tightly to the past cannot embrace what the future offers. As she spoke, I felt something shift in my mind, not invasive, but gentle, like a cool breeze on a fevered brow. For just a moment, the constant ache of Sarah's absence lessened, and I could almost see clearly again. Sometimes, she continued, her form now translucent, but her voice still achingly kind, the greatest act of love is learning to let go. The words hit me like a physical blow. How could she know? How could she see the way I clung to Sarah's memory, the way I used my grief as both shield and weapon? And yet, despite the terrifying implications of her insight into my soul, her delivery was so gentle, so genuinely caring, that I felt tears prick at my eyes. And then they were gone. The fire roared back to life, the shadows resumed their dance, and the oppressive weight lifted from the room. But the silence that followed was deafening. Damon slowly rose to his feet, his expression thoughtful. 3 months, he said quietly. That's reasonable. I nodded, still reeling from Lady Morwen's final words. 3 months to settle this quietly, I repeated, my voice hoarse. But as I stood there in the aftermath of their presence, Lady Morwen's words echoed in my mind. The greatest act of love is learning to let go.
Chapter 13. The morning after the artificer's visit, I watched from my window as the ancient mage moved through Shadowwood's perimeter, his gnarled hands weaving intricate patterns in the air. Magic shimmered around him like heat waves, invisible threads of power strengthening the barriers that protected our territory. The wards will hold against most intrusions now, he announced when he found Liam near the training grounds. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in my mate's shoulders ease slightly. But remember, Alpha, magic is only as strong as the will behind it. I couldn't hear Liam's response, but I saw him nod, his posture straightening with renewed purpose. The artificer's parting words drifted on the wind. Your Luna shows promise. Trust her instincts. My heart fluttered at the unexpected validation. After the mage vanished into the morning mist, I felt the strengthened wards humming with protective energy, a subtle vibration that every wolf in the pack could sense. It bought us time, but time for what? The Western Pact's aggression continued to escalate, and war felt inevitable. What I didn't expect was how naturally I would begin to share Liam's burden, or how much I would come to crave those shared moments. Toot had spent the night analyzing our eastern defensive positions, noting vulnerabilities that kept me awake until dawn. When I saw Liam beginning his morning patrol, I didn't hesitate. I fell into step beside him, my voice steady as I outlined my concerns. The ridgeline here, I pointed to a cluster of trees, offers excellent visibility, but it's exposed. A skilled archer could cause significant damage from the opposite slope. He turned to look at me, and for a moment, I saw something shift in his expression. Not the polite attention he usually gave my observations, but genuine consideration. What do you suggest? My heart quickened. He was asking for my opinion. Mobile patrols, rotating positions every 2 hours. Make it unpredictable. and perhaps a few false positions, scarecrows to draw their attention while the real scouts remain hidden. He nodded slowly, and I caught a glimpse of something that might have been respect in his eyes. Implement it this afternoon. That simple validation sent warmth spreading through my chest. He had taken my suggestion without question, without the need to discuss it with his other advisors first. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. The next day I approached him again, this time with intelligence about the Western Pack's supply routes that I had pieced together from multiple scout reports. I expected him to listen politely and perhaps incorporate my findings later. Instead, he stopped walking entirely, his full attention focused on my words. "Show me," he said, his voice carrying a new note of urgency. We spent an hour bent over maps in the war room, and I watched as he absorbed my analysis, asked pointed questions, and began formulating immediate responses. When other pack members entered, he introduced my findings as if they were crucial intelligence, which I suppose they were. Each day brought new opportunities to prove myself, and each day I felt the barriers between us lowering incrementally. Not the emotional barriers, those remained firmly in place, but the professional ones. He began seeking my opinions on matters beyond basic pack intelligence. He would find me during training sessions, during meals, during the quiet moments between crises. "What do you think of Marcus's progress with the new recruits?" he asked one evening as we watched the training session from the edge of the field. I studied the young wolves sparring under Marcus's direction, noting their form, their stamina, their tactical awareness. He's pushing them hard, but not strategically. They're building muscle memory for individual combat, but they need to learn unit cohesion. In real battle, they'll be fighting as a pack, not as lone wolves. Liam's gaze sharpened. Elaborate. Pair them with experienced warriors, not just for sparring, but for coordinated exercises. Teach them to anticipate each other's movements, to cover each other's weaknesses. I paused, watching a particularly enthusiastic young wolf nearly collide with his partner. They're brave, but bravery without coordination is just chaos. He implemented the change the next day. These moments of consultation became the highlights of my days, not just because they proved my worth to the pack, but because they showed me glimpses of the man beneath the alpha facade. When we discussed strategy, Liam's carefully maintained emotional distance would slip just slightly. He would lean closer to study a map, his scent washing over me like a comforting embrace. He would meet my eyes when making a point, and I would catch fleeting expressions of approval, consideration, even what might have been admiration. I was falling deeper for him with each passing day, and I couldn't bring myself to care about the futility of it. The shift became most apparent during our planning sessions for the upcoming conflict. What had started as formal military briefings gradually evolved into true collaboration. He would present a problem, and I would offer solutions. I would identify a weakness, and he would help me develop strategies to address it. "Their numbers are greater than anticipated," Finn reported during one particularly tense meeting, his voice tight as he pointed to markings on the map. "And their defenses are formidable. A direct assault would be costly." "A direct assault is exactly what they want us to attempt," Liam replied, his voice flat. "They've fortified that position to draw us in, to bleed us dry." I had been studying the map for days, and suddenly the solution crystallized in my mind. "A feint," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "Not a direct assault, a diversionary attack on their southern flank. Small but aggressive, enough to draw their main force. While their attention is diverted, a smaller, highly agile unit could bypass their main defenses and strike at their supply lines from the north." All eyes turned to me. Finn bristled initially. "Bypass their main defenses? Luna, that terrain is treacherous, and their northern patrols are tight." "Which is why it would be unexpected," I countered, meeting his gaze steadily. "The Stonehaven pack has extensive experience with treacherous terrain. We train for it. A small unit, skilled in stealth and speed, could navigate it. And if they're focused on the feint, their northern patrols will be stretched thin or even recalled." I pointed to a narrow, almost imperceptible line on the map, a path I had memorized from my own pack's territorial knowledge. "This path here, it's rarely used, even by their own scouts. It leads directly to their supply caches." Liam's attention sharpened, and I felt his gaze like a physical touch. It's a high-risk maneuver, Luna. The losses could be significant if the feint fails, or if the unit is detected. All war carries risk, Alpha, I replied, holding his gaze. But this offers a higher chance of success with fewer overall casualties than a direct frontal assault, and crippling their supply lines would force them to retreat or at least halt their advance, buying us crucial time. I watched as he looked to Kale, then to Finn. The moments stretched, and I held my breath. Finally, Finn grunted in reluctant agreement. It has merit, Alpha. Dangerous, but clever. Very well, Liam said, his voice firm. We will plan for it. Elara, you will work with Finn to develop the detailed plan for the Northern Unit. Select the most agile, stealthy warriors, and you will lead them. My heart nearly stopped. He was entrusting me with not just the planning, but the execution of a critical mission. Understood, Alpha. I will not fail you. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, trust, perhaps even pride. It was gone in an instant, but it left me breathless. As the days passed, I found myself spending more and more time in his presence. We would work late into the night, reviewing plans, discussing contingencies, preparing for every possible scenario. During these quiet hours, when the rest of the pack slept, I began to see past his carefully constructed walls. He was exhausted. That much was obvious. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his movements carried the weight of constant tension. But more than that, I began to notice the small things. The way he would rub his temples when a particularly complex problem arose. The slight softening in his expression when he spoke about protecting the pack. The rare moments when his guard would drop and I would catch a glimpse of genuine emotion. You're thinking too hard, I told him one evening as we reviewed patrol schedules. The others had left hours ago, but we remained surrounded by maps and reports. He looked up, startled. War requires thought. It requires clarity, I corrected gently. You can't strategize effectively when you're running on 2 hours of sleep and nothing but black coffee. I watched him process my words, saw the moment when his stubborn pride warred with practical necessity. The pack depends on me being sharp. The pack depends on you being alive, I replied, surprised by my own boldness. A dead alpha serves no one. For a moment, his mask slipped entirely. I saw the bone-deep exhaustion, the crushing weight of responsibility, the fear he carried for his pack's survival. It was raw and human and heartbreaking. I can't afford to be weak, he said quietly, and I heard the vulnerability beneath the words. Rest isn't weakness, I said softly. It's wisdom. He studied my face for a long moment, and I felt the strangest sensation, as if he were truly seeing me, not just the Luna he had been obligated to mate, but the woman who had chosen to stand beside him in this impossible situation. These glimpses of the man beneath the alpha only deepened my feelings for him. I was falling in love with his dedication, his strength, his unwavering commitment to protecting those under his care. But I was also falling in love with his vulnerability, his quiet moments of doubt, the way he carried his grief like a sacred burden. One evening, after a particularly intense training session with the Northern Unit, I knocked on his door with revisions to our deployment strategy. When he called me in, I found him hunched over intelligence reports, his usually perfect posture betraying his exhaustion. I've refined the approach for the Northern Unit, I said, unrolling the map on his table. I leaned over it, conscious of his proximity, as I traced the new route. If they take this path, they can avoid the scout post entirely. It's more treacherous but faster, and it offers better concealment. He leaned in to study the map, and I caught my breath as his scent surrounded me. For a moment I thought I heard a low rumble from his chest, quickly suppressed. It's a tight squeeze, he murmured, his voice rougher than usual. Even for agile wolves. My pack trains for it, I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. We call it the serpent's coil. It requires absolute precision, absolute silence, but it is effective. He straightened, putting distance between us, and I felt the loss of his nearness like a physical ache. Very well, we will incorporate it. Ensure your chosen warriors are fully briefed on the risks. Of course, Alpha. I will oversee their training personally. I paused, studying his face. The exhaustion was written in every line, every shadow. You look tired, Alpha. You push yourself too hard. My words seemed to pierce through his defenses. For a moment, his expression softened, and I saw something that might have been gratitude. "The pack needs me sharp," he replied, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "The Western pack won't wait for me to rest." "I understand," I said softly, my heart aching for him. "But a tired alpha is a vulnerable alpha. Rest, Liam, even for a few hours." The moment I said his name, not his title, just his name, something shifted between us. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but it felt monumental, like crossing an invisible threshold. As I gathered my maps to leave, I paused at the door. "Alpha," I said quietly, "I believe this plan will work. We will be ready." "I know," he replied, his voice low. "You are invaluable, Elara. Invaluable." The word sent warmth flooding through me, and I felt a small smile touch my lips. As I walked back to my chambers, I reflected on how much had changed since that first awkward mating ceremony. I had come to Shadowwood expecting nothing more than a political alliance. Instead, I had found a pack worth protecting, a purpose worth pursuing, and a man worth loving, even if that love would never be returned. I began to see glimpses of the man he might have been before grief claimed him. In quiet moments when he thought no one was watching, I would catch flashes of warmth in his eyes, hints of the charm that Kale had mentioned. During strategy sessions, when a particularly clever solution emerged, I would see a brief spark of satisfaction that transformed his entire expression. I was falling deeper in love with him every day, and I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Even knowing that his heart remained locked away, even understanding that I might never be more than a valued ally, I couldn't stop the tide of emotion that rose within me whenever he looked at me with approval, whenever he trusted me with crucial decisions, whenever he let his guard down just enough to reveal the man beneath the alpha. And if that was all I could have of Liam, it would be enough. It had to be enough. Chapter 14. With the Western pack growing bolder, Liam ordered a joint patrol to the vulnerable northern border, the same area where I'd mapped my Serpent's Coil strategy. Just the two of us, Kale, and a few elite scouts. The forest wrapped around us like a breath held too long, autumn air laced with pine and frost. Liam walked beside me, steady, silent, present. "We're close to the last breach point," he said, voice low. "Their camp is roughly 2 days north. They're probing for cracks." "They won't find one," I answered. "If we draw them through the valley, cut off their retreat with a strike through the coil, we can take out their supply line without warning. It's a precision strike. My warriors are ready." He glanced at me, just for a second, but it was enough to make my heart flutter and to rouse something deeper within me. My wolf stirred. She had been restless all morning. She trusted Liam's strength, respected him as alpha, but there was something else beneath her awareness of him, something feral, possessive, drawn. The more he held himself apart, the more she prowled inside me, ears perked, waiting. She liked his scent, liked the way he walked beside us without flinching, liked the way he shielded us without hesitation. She wanted him closer. Then it happened. A loud, violent crack. A tree branch, massive, rotted, snapped free above us. Time slowed. My instincts kicked in, but not fast enough. His did. Liam was on me before I could react. A blur of motion. He tackled me with terrifying force, locking an arm around my waist, the other shielding my head as we hit the ground. His body curled around mine, absorbing the impact. I heard the branch slam into the earth behind us, shattering into splinters. But all I felt was him. His chest against mine, breath ragged in my ear. His scent, pine, heat, strength, surrounded me, filled me. His hand gripped my waist with unrelenting force, fingers curled into my furs like he needed to feel I was alive. I didn't move, couldn't. His heart pounded beneath my cheek. His jaw brushed my temple. His thigh was locked between mine, holding me still, anchoring me to the ground. Every inch of him was fire, solid and alive, and something in me shattered. My wolf lunged upward, wild and surging. He is ours. She wasn't gentle. She was fierce, protective, certain. She pressed against my skin, howling silently inside me, from a primal possessive instinct that rose like flame in my chest. Her response to his touch was instantaneous and overwhelming. He chose us. He shielded us. He felt fear. For us. And I had felt him too. Liam's face was close, too close. Our breath mingled. His eyes, dark and wide, searched mine. His mask was gone. For one moment I saw the man, not the alpha, not the command. The man, vulnerability, terror, and beneath it, desire. Not lust, hunger, real. He looked at my lips. I reached for his face, my fingers brushing against his cheek. My wolf stilled, waiting, needing, so close. So Alpha, Luna! Kale's voice exploded through the air. Liam snapped away from me like a whip crack. Gone was the fire, the softness, the tremor in his hands. He rose in one motion, pulling me up with him, already composed. Mask in place. Back straight. We're fine, he said tightly. Unstable branch. Kale burst through the trees, weapons ready. Are you injured? No, Liam answered, not even glancing at me. Resume patrol. Kale nodded hesitantly, gave the signal. They melted back into the trees. Liam turned to me. His voice was soft, gentle. Are you hurt? I swallowed hard. My heart was still racing. No, I'm fine. He gave a short nod, then walked ahead without another word. But the silence between us now pulsed with memory. My wolf prowled inside me, pacing. She wasn't heartbroken. She was patient, fierce, knowing. She remembered how he'd held us, how he'd shielded us with his body. So did I. We returned to the main den as dusk fell. Purple shadows stretched across the clearing. Liam walked ahead, shoulders squared like stone. That night, I lay in my den beneath thick furs, staring at the ceiling, still wrapped in the heat of his body, the weight of that moment. My wolf was silent now, but present. Curled deep in my chest, calm and waiting.
Chapter 15. The scent of pine and stone, her scent, clung to me long after the patrol ended. It threaded through my den like smoke, embedding itself into the furs, the air, my skin. Elara. I hadn't meant to hold her that long. It had been instinct, a reflexive alpha response to danger. The tree branch cracked overhead, and before I could think, I had moved, thrown my body between hers and the threat, wrapped her in my arms, shielded her with my frame. My muscles still remembered the weight of her pressed against me, the rapid beat of her heart against my chest, the warm slide of her breath against my neck. Her scent, wild and grounding, was burned into me, and I hated that I didn't want to let go. Duty, I told myself, but the truth, I had wanted her closer. And my wolf had howled, not with rage, not with warning, but with need. She is ours. It was the first time in a year that he had sounded so alive. And I didn't know what to do with that. I sank onto my furs, dragging my hands down my face, trying to breathe past the aching tension in my chest. I had spent so long being numb, buried in silence, letting grief hollow me out until I was little more than duty wrapped in flesh. But now, Elara's presence, her voice, her strength, had started to thaw that frozen part of me. And it terrified me, because every flicker of warmth felt like a betrayal of Sarah. The ghost of her smile hovered at the edge of my vision. The memory of her laugh, the way she used to tug my shirt when she wanted my attention, even when I pretended to ignore her, the way she'd called me her storm. She had been everything, and I had buried her with every ounce of love I had. And now I was feeling again. And I hated it, because I didn't know how to let go without dishonoring what we had. But my wolf didn't understand grief. He understood presence, scent, connection, and Elara was real, solid, and he wanted her, so did I. The days that followed the patrol blurred together, a whirlwind of drills, strategy, and political threads tightening with the Western Pac's rising aggression. Elara worked at my side tirelessly. Her insights were sharp, her leadership calm and commanding. The warriors respected her, the pack trusted her, and I, God's help me, I watched her. Too often. I watched the way she studied maps, the way her eyes narrowed in focus, the way she moved, graceful, sure. And I was hyper-aware of her scent, that subtle earthy spice that seemed to haunt every breath I took. Every time she came near, my wolf stirred. Every time she touched a scroll beside me, every time her fingers brushed mine, I felt it, that thrum of need. And worse, longing. I told myself it was only physical, a release of tension, a mistake. But I was lying, because when she looked at me, really looked, I felt seen, known. And a part of me, one I'd thought was dead, wanted to be known again. One evening, after a brutal day of drills and defensive coordination, I returned to my quarters to review the new intelligence reports. The den was quiet. Most wolves had gone to sleep. I was halfway through assessing the Riverbend trade route when a knock came at the door. A soft, measured knock. "Elara?" I said, already knowing. "I've finished reviewing the inventories," her voice came through. "Serafina flagged shortages. We'll need a resupply." "Enter." She stepped inside, scroll in hand. She looked tired but strong. Her hair was tied back loosely, tendrils framing her face. The moment she entered, her scent hit me. It settled over my skin like a second cloak. She unrolled the scroll on the table. Medicinal herbs are low. River bends too far unless we trade by hawk. A foraging party would be faster. I moved beside her, too close, but I didn't move away. We'll send Finn at dawn, I said, keeping my voice steady. I can assist, she offered. I know the terrain. No, I said too sharply. She blinked, then straightened. Why not? Because I couldn't stand the thought of her out there. Because my self-control was hanging by a fraying thread. Because if she went into those woods again, with me, I wasn't sure I'd stop at a kiss. You're needed here, I said, quieter now. With the defense, that's final. She nodded, her gaze unreadable. She began rolling up the scroll, her fingers brushed mine. And that was it. The thread snapped. I reached for her. Liam, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't wait. I kissed her. And gods, I devoured her. Her lips met mine in a perfect aching answer. Her hands tangled in my shirt, then my hair. Her body melted into me, and I pulled her flush against my chest, crushing her there like I could fuse us together. My wolf roared inside me. Yes, yes, take her. Claim her. He surged up, wild and triumphant. But even as I kissed her, he hesitated, conflicted, flickering like a flame caught in the wind. But what of the first? What of our mate? And there it was. That jagged edge, Sarah's name unspoken, her laughter a ghost in the room. The part of me that would always mourn her reeled back in guilt. But the other part, the one still alive, still warm, still aching, held Elara tighter. When we finally broke apart, panting, her lips swollen, her eyes full of everything I didn't deserve, I could barely breathe. Liam, she said softly. I looked at her, my soul split in two. I wish I could give you a whole heart, I rasped. She didn't flinch. I know, she whispered, but maybe you don't have to give all of it right now. Maybe just try. Try, a simple word, a terrifying promise. I drew her into my chest and buried my face in her hair. Her warmth soaked into me. Her heartbeat echoed against mine. And somewhere, deep in the tangled dark of my soul, a thought broke free. What would Sarah think? Would she hate me? Would she think I'd moved on too fast? That I had forgotten her? Or would she smile sadly and say, "You've grieved long enough, love. You don't have to die with me." My wolf went still then, no longer pulling in either direction, just waiting, hopeful. I held Elara tighter, pressing my lips to her forehead. I didn't know where this would lead. I didn't know if I could ever give her everything she deserved, but for the first time, I wanted to try.
Chapter 16. The kiss had been a cataclysm. It shattered the fragile acceptance I'd built around our bond, that it would remain respectful, distant, devoid of passion. Liam's lips on mine, the raw, unrestrained hunger of his kiss, the primal growl of his wolf vibrating through his chest, it had shaken something loose in me. Not just longing, not just hope. It was a glimpse, a dangerous, beautiful glimpse of what could be. But just as quickly, his words had reminded me of the wall between us. I wish I could give you a whole heart. The ache that followed was piercing. Because even as his words drew lines between us, his actions had drawn me in. His hands had clutched me like a lifeline. His kiss had devoured, not resisted. His body had betrayed his grief, revealing a hunger that went beyond physicality. It had been a plea. For connection. For comfort. For me. And in that moment, as I held him just as tightly, I knew I was falling, irrevocably, entirely, for this broken, grieving alpha, even if he could not yet fall for me. Not fully. Not yet. In the days that followed, the air around Shadowwood thickened with tension. The Western Pack's incursions became bolder, no longer scattered tests of our defenses, but deliberate, escalating acts of war. Each clash at the border rang louder, a drumbeat building toward battle. Liam and I returned to strategy, slipping into our professional rhythms, but something had changed. Beneath every map laid between us, every patrol plan we reviewed, a hum of unspoken awareness now lingered. Every brush of his fingers near mine felt charged. Every glance, every silence stretched taut. He still watched over me, still ensured my safety on treacherous terrain, still shielded me with that innate, instinctive protectiveness. But now, his gaze lingered longer. His presence near me felt warmer, closer, more personal. My wolf noticed every change. He sees us, she whispered inside me. Not just as Luna, as mate. He feels it now. She was cautious, but no longer distant. Where once she had stood back, uncertain of a male who would not let us in, now she prowled beneath my skin, alert and aching. She longed for his wolf's presence. For the moment, they would truly recognize each other without barriers. But she also understood what I did. "He is wounded," she murmured. "And wounds take time to heal. We can wait for him as long as it takes." Late one evening after a long day, I returned to my den, exhausted to the bone. I barely had the strength to unstrap my boots when a soft knock sounded at my connecting door. "Elara?" His voice was quiet, low, graveled with fatigue. "Yes," I answered, rising slowly. "Come in." Liam entered like a shadow, silent, worn, heavy with something unsaid. His hair was damp with sweat, the edge of his jaw unshaven, but it was his eyes that arrested me. Dark, haunted. "The Western Pack," he began. "They pushed hard today. We held the line, but we lost 2. I inhaled sharply. "Not numbers, not casualties. Wolves, our wolves." He didn't speak more. He didn't need to. I crossed the room without hesitation, stopping only when we were inches apart. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Truly." He didn't flinch at the words, but his jaw clenched, and I saw the weight settle on him like a second skin. "They were loyal," he said, voice hoarse. "They deserved better." "You did everything you could," I murmured, reaching out and placing my hand gently on his arm. His fur-lined sleeve was warm under my palm, and I felt the tension coil in his muscles like a bowstring pulled taut. He didn't move. And then, slowly, hesitantly, he placed his hand over mine. It was not a grand gesture, not possessive or hungry, but it vibrated with quiet grief and a desperate need for solace, for humanity amidst the Alpha's burden. "The weight never lessens," he whispered. "No," I said, "but it can be shared." His gaze lifted, meeting mine, and for one heartbeat I saw all of him, the leader, the man, the mate, and the man inside. Then he pulled me to him. This time there was no hunger, no passion, just the raw, trembling need for closeness. I sank into his embrace, pressing my forehead to his neck. He held me like someone anchoring himself against a tide too strong to bear alone. My wolf hummed softly inside me. She curled against his presence in comfort. "He needs this," she whispered. "Let him have us." So I held him, strong and still, breathing in the scent of grief and battle sweat. I held him like I was strong enough to take it all, and for once he let himself lean on someone else. When he pulled back much later, there was no apology on his lips, just a shadowed gaze that held a flicker of gratitude. "Thank you," he murmured. "Always," I answered. His thumb brushed gently across my cheek, a brief, tender caress that stole the breath from my lungs, and then he left, the soft click of the door his only goodbye. In the days that followed, war pressed ever closer. I poured myself into preparations, drills, training, ward checks, intelligence updates. I led patrols and strategy meetings, moving among the wolves not just as Luna, but as a warrior in my own right. And Liam was always there, quiet, steady, watching. He rarely touched me in public, but when we passed close, his hand would brush against mine, lingering just long enough to remind me that the distance between us was shrinking. That the fortress around his heart had cracks now, thin but widening. Sometimes late at night he would knock once, not for strategy, not for orders, just to sit beside me in silence, and sometimes our hands would find each other in that quiet, no words exchanged, no promises made, just fingers laced together in a room thick with unspoken grief, unspoken want, and a fragile, unyielding bond. He was trying, and that, more than anything, was what I held on to. Because while my heart had already begun its descent, while my wolf already recognized him as ours, I knew what it meant for Liam to simply reach. He might still feel broken, but he was reaching toward me. And I would be here, through every shadow, every silence, until the moment he was ready to fall to.
Chapter 17. The scent of blood and an impending storm hung thick in the air, a suffocating prelude to the war closing in. The Western Pack's incursions had turned relentless. No longer testing us, they were pressing, probing, planning to breach, and I was preparing to meet them with fire and steel. But even in the chaos, my thoughts kept drifting back to her, Elara, the woman who had stepped quietly into the heart of my pack and slowly, agonizingly, into the guarded ruins of my soul. We hadn't spoken of the kiss since it happened, but it lingered, on my skin, in my blood, in the hollow ache that throbbed every time I saw her. The memory of her mouth beneath mine, the taste of her, the way her body had yielded to me, it haunted me. And yet it grounded me. It reminded me I was still a man, not just an alpha carved out of duty and grief. The nights were the worst. That's when my thoughts turned traitor, when guilt and longing warred inside me until I could no longer sleep. And that night, I couldn't take it anymore. Her den door creaked softly as she opened it, her hair mussed from sleep, her eyes wide and soft. No surprise in them, just quiet recognition. "Liam," she whispered. I should have turned back, but the words came out ragged, instinctive. I couldn't sleep. Her eyes searched mine, and for once, I didn't try to mask the storm. She didn't ask questions. She simply stepped aside and let me in. The fire in her hearth had dimmed, casting a soft amber glow that wrapped the space in warmth. I stood just inside, the door clicking shut behind me. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I was afraid I'd say the wrong thing, or worse, everything. Elara padded barefoot to her furs and sat, patting the space beside her. I moved without hesitation, my body already pulled to hers like a magnet to steel. We sat in silence for a beat until her hand found mine, fingers weaving between my own, grounding me. My breath hitched. My heart, always so heavy, thudded with a strange new rhythm. Her touch had always been comfort. Tonight, it was more. It was an invitation, a choice. I turned to her slowly. She met my gaze unwavering. "Elara," I whispered, voice low, rough. A warning, a plea. She didn't respond in words. She leaned in and brushed her lips softly against mine. It was not the wild, desperate kiss from before. It was something gentler, slower, a question. I answered with a low sound in my throat and kissed her back, deeper this time. My hand cradled her jaw. Her fingers slid into my hair. My wolf stirred, wanting, needing her, but he hesitated too. The scent of her stirred something reverent in him, something sacred. We both felt it, the memory of Sarah, still present, but fading, slowly, quietly, like the last embers of a fire. I broke the kiss, panting softly. "If we do this," I began, forehead resting against hers, "you have to know I'm still broken." "I know," she whispered, "but I don't want your perfection, Liam, just your truth." I closed my eyes, and then I kissed her again, letting go. Clothes fell away slowly, her robe slipping off her shoulders. Her skin was warm, her scent wrapping around me like home. We moved slowly at first, with hesitation and reverence, as if we were afraid of breaking something sacred between us. But it didn't stay gentle. Need surged. My mouth found her throat. Her nails grazed my back. Her body arched beneath mine like a bowstring pulled taut. Every touch was a claim, every breath a surrender. She whispered my name once, twice, each time grounding me more deeply than any memory ever had. Her wolf rose to meet mine, brushing against me in a wordless hum of need, of trust. My own wolf responded with equal reverence and hunger, no longer confused, no longer torn, just drawn. I felt like I was falling and rising at once. Afterward, we lay tangled in each other. My arm around her waist, her leg hooked over mine. Her head rested on my shoulder, and I could feel the slow, steady rhythm of her heartbeat, syncing with mine. For a long while, I stared at the ceiling, my thumb gently tracing circles on her hip. My thoughts were still tangled, grief and guilt threading through the euphoria, but one truth pulsed louder than the rest. I didn't want to lose her. Not to war, not to distance, not to fear, and that terrified me. My heart still felt fractured. But for the first time, I realized maybe it wasn't about replacing what was lost. Maybe it was about building something new from the ruins. "Elara," I murmured into her hair, "if something happens to you out there." She rose slightly to look at me, eyes serious. "Nothing will happen. I'll lead the mission. I'll come back." "You don't know that." "I do," she whispered, "because you'll be waiting." I exhaled shakily. My lips found her forehead. "I will, always." She nestled closer, and for the first time in a long time, I let the warmth lull me into sleep. No memories, just her. The gathering storm still loomed, but in that moment I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If I lost her, I wouldn't survive it. Not this time.
Chapter 18. The next morning, the air crackled with anticipation. The Western Pack was massing. Our scouts reported their numbers, their formations. The final battle was imminent. I channeled all my energy into preparing for it. My unit, the Serpent's Coil, was ready. My chosen warriors, agile and stealthy, were briefed, their faces grim but resolute. Liam was a whirlwind of activity, his commands sharp, decisive. He moved through the pack, his presence radiating authority and inspiring confidence. He was the alpha, leading his people into war. Just before the final deployment, he sought me out. We stood alone for a moment amidst the organized chaos of the departing warriors. His eyes, dark and intense, met mine. "Elara," he said, his voice low, his gaze sweeping over me. A silent assessment. "Be safe, your unit is crucial. And your life, it is more so." My heart gave a fierce leap. It wasn't a declaration of love, not in words, but the raw concern in his voice, the desperate plea in his eyes, spoke volumes. He feared losing me, and that fear, raw and undeniable, was a powerful testament to the connection growing between us. "And you, Alpha," I replied, my voice unwavering, my hand instinctively reaching out, finding his. My fingers intertwined with his, a firm, reassuring grip. "Be safe. We will win this, together." He squeezed my hand, his gaze holding mine for a long, silent moment. In that shared glance, a universe of unspoken understanding passed between us. A shared destiny, a shared burden, a shared, burgeoning connection that transcended duty. Then he released my hand, turning to address the assembled warriors. "For Shadowwood, for the Alliance, for our future." "For the Pack," the warriors roared in unison, their voices echoing through the forest. I turned to my unit, my heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and a fierce, protective love for this pack, for this Alpha. I led my unit into the dense forest, moving silently, swiftly towards the northern pass. The air was thick with the scent of pine, of damp earth, and of the rising tension of war. And then the battle erupted. The sounds of clashing bodies, the snarls of wolves, the cries of battle echoed through the forest. The fight had begun. My unit moved faster, deeper into enemy territory, a blur of shadows and silent purpose. This was it, the crucible. And in the heart of the storm, I knew, Liam and I, we would face it together. Our bond, forged in duty, tempered by grief, and now ignited by a tentative physical intimacy, would be tested. And I knew with a certainty that thrilled me that we would emerge stronger.
Chapter 19. The roar of battle was a deafening symphony, a chaotic maelstrom of snarls, howls, and the sickening thud of bodies colliding. The scent of blood, sharp and metallic, mingled with the acrid tang of fear and the raw musk of fighting wolves. I was at the heart of it, a blur of teeth and claws, my instincts honed to a razor's edge. My commands ripped through the din, sharp and decisive, guiding my warriors, pushing them forward, holding the line. The Western Pack was a relentless tide, their numbers vast, their ferocity chilling. But my Shadowwood warriors, bolstered by the Stonehaven alliance, fought with a desperate, unwavering loyalty. We were defending our home, our future, our very existence. My gaze constantly swept the battlefield, assessing, reacting, but always instinctively searching for her. Elara. Her unit, the Serpent's Coil, had launched their surprise attack on the northern flank, a crucial diversion. I trusted her. I trusted her strategic mind, her formidable skill. But the fear of losing her, a raw, visceral dread, gnawed at me with every passing moment. It was a fear that now rivaled my fear for my pack's survival, a terrifying realization of how deeply she had woven herself into the fabric of my existence. I fought with a renewed ferocity, fueled by that fear. Every blow I landed, every Western wolf I brought down, was for my pack, for their survival, and for her. I saw Kale, a whirlwind of power, his gruff commands cutting through the chaos. Finn, a young lion, fought with a desperate courage, his eyes blazing. My pack was a single, unified force, a wall of fur and fangs against the encroaching darkness. Hours bled into an eternity. The sun, once high, began its slow descent, casting long, grotesque shadows across the blood-soaked earth. The sounds of battle began to wane, the desperate howls of the Western Pack growing weaker, their retreat becoming undeniable. We had pushed them back. We had won. But victory tasted like ash. As the last of the Western Pack wolves fled, leaving a trail of blood and broken bodies, a profound silence descended upon the battlefield. It was a silence heavier than any noise, a silence filled with the echoes of screams, of dying breaths. My body ached, every muscle screaming in protest, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the crushing weight in my chest. I walked through the carnage, my heart a leaden weight. The scent of death was everywhere, thick and cloying. My warriors, exhausted but triumphant, began to gather, their faces grim, their eyes searching for their fallen. "Alpha!" Kale's voice, hoarse with exhaustion, reached me. He approached, his face streaked with dirt and blood, but his eyes held a fierce pride. "We held them. We won." I nodded, unable to speak. My gaze swept over my pack, counting faces, searching for the familiar, dreading the absent. "Casualties," I rasped, the word tasting like bile. Kale's jaw tightened. "Too many, Alpha. Lara, Anya, and 3 others. They fought bravely." The names hit me like physical blows. Lyra, Anya. The young warriors Elara had joked with, laughed with, pushed in training. They were gone, dead. My pack members, my responsibility. A fresh wave of grief, raw and profound, washed over me, mingling with the lingering sorrow for Sarah. It was a familiar ache, but now it was compounded by a crushing sense of failure. I had led them, I had protected them, but I hadn't protected all of them. The weight of their loss, their sacrifice, was almost unbearable. My eyes searched the returning warriors, a desperate, silent prayer on my lips. Where was she? Where was Elara? Her unit had gone deep behind enemy lines. Had she returned? Was she safe? The fear, sharp and visceral, clawed at my throat. Then I saw her. Emerging from the northern tree line, a small group of warriors behind her, their faces grim but victorious. Elara. Her fur was matted with dirt and blood, not her own, I saw with a surge of relief. Her movements weary, but her posture still straight, her head held high. She was alive. She was safe. A wave of profound relief, so intense it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. She was here. She was safe. The fear that had gnawed at me, the terror of losing her, had been almost unbearable. And now, seeing her whole and alive, a desperate need for her presence, for her comfort, overwhelmed me. She saw me then, her gaze locking with mine across the battlefield. Her eyes, dark and intense, held a shared exhaustion, a shared grief, and a quiet understanding that seemed to pierce through the very core of my being. I started walking towards her, my steps heavy, my body aching, but my need for her overriding everything else. I didn't care who saw. I didn't care about my stoic alpha facade. It had shattered. All that remained was a man, broken by loss, desperate for solace. She met me halfway, her warriors peeling away to join their comrades. We stood before each other, the silence between us profound, filled with the echoes of battle and the weight of our shared experience. Her scent, pine and stone and wild earth, was a balm to my senses, a grounding presence in the chaos. "Liam," she whispered, her voice husky with exhaustion, her gaze searching mine. "Elara," I rasped, my voice raw, broken. The words were a confession, a desperate plea. I reached out, my hands trembling slightly, and cupped her face. Her skin was warm, soft beneath my palms. Her eyes, luminous in the fading light, held a quiet empathy that made my chest ache. "We won," she said, her voice barely audible, but the words were a statement of fact, a testament to our shared victory. "At a cost," I replied, the words thick with grief, my voice a low, guttural sound. My thumb brushed her cheek, and I felt the tremor that ran through me, the raw vulnerability I could no longer hide. "Lyra, Anya, and 3 others. They're gone." Her eyes widened, a fresh wave of sorrow washing over her face. She knew them. She had trained with them, laughed with them. Her own composure, usually so unshakable, fractured. A profound sadness settled over her features, mirroring my own. Her hand came up, covering mine on her cheek, her fingers tightening, a silent acknowledgement of the shared grief. I pulled her closer, my arms wrapping around her, crushing her to my chest. I buried my face in her neck, inhaling her scent, now mingled with the faint tang of blood and the heavy scent of grief. I clung to her, my grip almost painful, as if she was the only thing keeping me from shattering, from dissolving into the blood-soaked earth. She held me. She didn't speak. She didn't try to offer empty platitudes. She simply held me, her arms tightening around my powerful frame, her body a solid, unwavering anchor in my storm. I felt her hands stroke my hair, a soothing, rhythmic motion that slowly, tentatively, began to calm the tempest within me. I felt the tremor in her own body, a testament to her shared grief, her own brokenness at the loss of these pack members. I clung to her, my face buried in her neck, feeling the warmth of her body, the steady beat of her heart against my ear. It was a comfort so profound, so absolute, that it felt like coming home after a long, desolate journey. Her scent, her touch, her silent strength, they were a balm to my shattered soul. This was it. This was the moment. The fortress of my heart, so fiercely guarded, had finally crumbled. In the face of overwhelming loss, in the depths of my despair, I had instinctively sought her comfort, and she had given it without judgment, without expectation, her own heart aching with mine. I didn't know if it was love, but it was a desperate, undeniable need, a profound connection that transcended duty, transcended even the physical intimacy we had begun to explore. It was a primal recognition of solace, of belonging, of a presence that could hold me when I thought I might shatter. I stayed there for a long time, simply holding her, drawing solace from her presence, allowing her to bear the weight of my raw grief. My body shook with the aftermath of battle and sorrow, but she didn't flinch. She simply held me, her strength unwavering, her own grief a silent companion to mine. "Elara," I whispered, my voice still hoarse, but filled with a new, terrifying realization. "I don't know what to say." She reached up, her thumb gently wiping a smudge from my cheek. Her touch was soft, tender, sending shivers through me. "You don't have to say anything, Liam. Just feel." And I did. I felt the lingering ache of grief, yes, but beneath it, a new, fragile warmth was beginning to spread, a tiny flicker of hope in the vast emptiness. I felt a profound gratitude for her unwavering presence, for her quiet strength. And for the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that my heart, though broken, might not be entirely beyond repair. I leaned in, my mouth finding hers. This kiss was different. It wasn't the desperate hunger of before, not just a physical release. It was soft, tender, filled with a raw vulnerability, a hesitant promise. It was a kiss of solace, of gratitude, of a dawning realization. Her lips were soft, yielding, responding with an equal measure of tenderness. Her arms came around my neck, pulling me closer, deepening the kiss. It was a silent conversation, a profound acknowledgement of the new, fragile connection that had just been forged in the crucible of battle and grief. When we finally broke apart, gasping for breath, the silence was still profound, but now it was filled with a different kind of energy. Hope. I began again, my voice still rough, but now filled with a desperate need to articulate the swirling emotions within me. I think I'm falling in love with you, Elara." The words were clumsy, hesitant, terrifying, but they were true. They were the truth my heart had finally, irrevocably admitted. Her eyes widened, luminous in the fading light. A slow, radiant smile spread across her face, a genuine, uninhibited smile that reached her eyes, making them sparkle. "I've been in love with you for what feels like forever," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Before I even had the words for it, before I could admit it to myself, it's always been you." Tears traced silent paths down her cheeks, and then she pulled me to her, her lips finding mine again. But this kiss was no longer laced with longing or pain. It was love, pure and unadulterated, a vow, a beginning. The war might be over, but this was the victory, the healing. My heart, though scarred, was no longer a fortress. It was hers now, open, tender, and true.
And there you have it. Liam and Elara's journey from a marriage of duty to a love that conquered grief itself. Sometimes the heart finds a way, even when we're certain it's lost forever. This is Vivian Solis, signing off and wishing you your own happily ever after.